Victoria 3 is a game which has, over the course of its past couple years of release, changed significantly. I made a tutorial about a year ago which went over the game's economics, and since the game's pretty much all about economics, it was a pretty solid piece of coverage. That all being said, the game has changed since that past year. I too have changed. New haircut, new computer, and most impactfully, new friends.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm here.
Yeah.
You sound like you have a gun to your head.
Oh, he does. He does, by the way.
I am complying with all laws and regulations, especially whatever Tarkus has informed me to do.
So, to make the tutorial experience more interesting, I brought on my good friends Lemon Cake and Jillyeon to act as the curious students looking to learn Victoria 3's difficult-to-read systems. Neither of them have ever played Victoria 3, and I'm not sure if they ever do intend to play it, but I roped them in anyway, and we spent 4 hours just talking Victoria 3. Well, I did most of the talking. Anyway, rather than subject people to that disorganized mess of a 4-hour stream, fun as it was, I've taken the time to condense down the lessons from that stream into actually cohesive explanations and lessons for this video. Essentially, we'll be going over that stream in this video with post-commentary provided to further, better, or more concisely explain things. In some cases, I actually forgot entirely to talk about particular things, but this also gives me the chance to do that. Let's get started.
So I gotta ask you guys. Let me be the one to ask questions here. What are your preconceptions about Victoria 3 before we even start playing the game here? What do you believe this game is?
I know this as economy spreadsheet game.
Okay.
That's literally it. Sometimes people post screenshots of it in my Discord of them doing funny things, but that's it.
I see. Okay. And Lemon, your impression?
Well, I'm not allowed to talk for the full 5 hours, and I'm frankly way too sober to start, to give me my true opinions on stream.
Yeah.
But despite some of my, maybe if they're known preconceptions, I have seen very positive movements in the latest DLCs. So I've unironically been swinging more and more positive towards this game, which is impressive, to say the least.
Yeah. Do you feel the barrel of my handgun at the back of your neck while you're saying this?
I think my unironic assessment more towards the situation is that I like it when I can move the funny soldiers on the map, and I'm very sad I can't do that. But you know what? The game is starting to make up for it in at least other ways.
I see.
I find this question to be far more important than it might seem initially. Expectations inform a massive part of how you'll feel about a game, and I think Victoria 3 has amassed a notoriety for itself in the past couple years. For Jillyeon, it's the spreadsheet nerd game, which is an unavoidable reputation for the game, while for Lemon, it's still the deeply flawed, easy-to-hate mess that came out all those years ago. This is also an unavoidable reputation for a game which indeed was, and still is, but to a lesser extent, flawed. Anyway, to address those points, and good points they were, Victoria 3 is the kind of game you can spreadsheet to hell and back. It's also the kind of game where doing so is rewarding, and guys like Generalist Gaming and Connor have made huge strides in the community for their contributions to the Victoria 3 community's hardcore and optimized sub-communities. Nonetheless, there's so much more to this game than just that. Victoria 3 can be played to be optimal, but it doesn't have to be. It has more in common with Crusader Kings 3 in that sense, where being optimal is not necessarily the total point of the game. In Victoria 3, you can pursue a high GDP at the most basic level, a high standard of living for something a little more complex, or you could pursue the classic sort of roleplay goals that Crusader Kings is more known for. Whether that's making Abraham Lincoln the King of America, or restoring Carlist Spain, or even something non-character driven like making a particular company dominate the world market, that's the rub here. Victoria 3 can be a role-playing game, but the roleplay can be based on things other than characters. A classic Victoria 3 goal is to simply take a country and make them communist, or to turn a liberal monarchy into some kind of fascist state, or a capitalist hellscape, and so on and so forth. I want to summarize the little rant by saying that Victoria 3 is a game with just as much roleplay opportunity as a game like CK3, but you have to keep in mind that the game is less character-oriented, and as such, you must reorient your roleplay to match it. Now, when it comes to the woes of Victoria 3 being buggy or unintuitive and other issues akin to what has made Lemon Cake have a bad impression, some of these things still exist. Is the UI hard to navigate sometimes? Yes. Is the military frustratingly broken at times? Yes. That all being said, those issues pale in comparison to what Victoria 3 once was, and so many of Victoria 3's mechanics have developed into greater things that I recommend any Victoria 3 forever haters really do give the game another chance, despite the fact that armies aren't what you want them to be. From here, it's time to talk about the economics of Victoria 3, and that begins with an interesting question from Lemon Cake.
My question is, I was just actually thinking this unironically for Victoria 3, and I'll give the idea to an out there. Is everyone tends to optimize for the highest standard of living? But I'm just wondering, why does no one optimize to get it as low as possible instead?
It's an interesting question,
Like, do
Lemon.
you want it to be high? What's the point of having a high standard of living? It seems like a waste of time and effort.
This can lead us into, I guess, the first lesson, okay, which is something about how the economy actually functions in the game, which is that, and we're gonna actually start like playing the game now a little bit. If we click on any state, there are people in them. I know, shocking, okay, and these people they want things and they work in places. So if we look at, for example, I don't know, like these Wallonian Catholic peasants in Wallonia, which I don't know why it sounds weird, I guess because they're Wallonians in Wallonia, but they have like things that they buy and they make money by doing things. So when you say, why keep the SOL high, or the standard of living, SOL is short for standard of living, okay?
Okay.
It's
I'm writing that
because,
down.
go ahead, yeah, put it on your notes. It's because they will purchase more things. And when they purchase more things, they increase the profits on buildings.
I didn't give it much fanfare in the explanation there, but actually this is the beating heart of Victoria 3's economy. Buildings produce goods, and those goods are sold either to other buildings or to pops. Because pops buy things, buildings can have profits, and via those profits, pops get paid wages, which they then use to buy said products. At the most basic level, buildings exist to make profits so they can pay out dividends to their owners. The most common pitfall for a new player is seeing high profits and believing this is a measure of usefulness on a building. Don't get me wrong, profits are nice, but we have to think about what forms of money are useful to us and which aren't. So, let's talk about where money goes. When a capitalist owns a building, part of their income goes to their own pockets, and they use that money to buy goods, contributing to profits in other industries. Another portion of that income goes to the investment pool, which I'll expand on in a moment. When the government owns a building, a portion of the money is put directly into the government budget, and the rest is destroyed to account for government inefficiency. When workers own a building, the money just goes in their pockets, much like with capitalists, except they don't use the investment pool unless you have a particular law called cooperative ownership, but that's much later in the game, so don't worry about it. Now that we know where the money goes, we have to ask ourselves how we can use that money. Until we start taxing dividends directly, we tax businesses through the wages they pay their workers. Thus, the way we increase our tax revenue in the early game is by having higher wages. Wages are based on the standard of living in a state, but more importantly on what job those pops have. Better jobs pay higher wages, and better production methods in buildings make better jobs like engineers and machinists and so on. That all being said, does that mean that we don't care about profits unless we can tax the wages? No, because profits still provide money for the investment pool, which we mentioned earlier. The investment pool is how much money the private queue has for building, and that does in fact mean that the richer and more profitable a building is, the more it contributes to even more buildings getting built via that investment pool. How does that help us? Well, those buildings will also pay out wages, which we can tax. Victoria 3's economy is mostly about this loop, the loop of generating profits which can create buildings that create wages, which we can tax. Again, later in the game, we unlock dividend taxes, meaning we can directly tax the profits on buildings, but we're keeping it focused on the early game's tax rules for this tutorial. Speaking of wages, we need to take a little detour to talk about peasants, which are also an important piece of why buildings matter.
You're going to have this peasant number, and these peasants are people that don't really contribute to the economy very much. I want you to imagine your great uncle you've never talked to who lives off the grid, okay? I assume everyone has one. I don't think I have one, but I'm going to assume that I have one for the purpose of argument. That great uncle does not buy anything. So in a sense, he doesn't contribute to the economy. He doesn't even consume electricity. He doesn't even consume like food from the grocery store. He just like hunts. He lives off the land, you could say. And that's exactly what peasants are, okay? Peasants are people that don't participate in the economy. And we can check that by looking at one of them and looking at where they get their money from. So if we check their economy, you see that they do have money, but their money comes from subsistence output. And subsistence output is magic woo-woo money that doesn't actually exist. This is basically just the game accepting that these people have to have money to buy things. So they end up, getting money. But this money isn't being paid from anywhere. It's just them existing on the land through what's called subsistence output. And then they use that money to also buy fake things that don't actually exist. So if you look at their needs, they're buying apparently some grain, but none of this, see, it's only consuming 6 grain. There's 600,000 people here, And to give you an idea, there's 516 grain in the market. So despite there being 500,000 of them, they're only consuming 6 out of the total of 516 units of grain in the market. Therefore, they're really not like contributing much to the economy.
They sound like people I need to put in the army because they seem useless.
Yes, they are better off in the army than they are as peasants.
Yay.
The goal of any good economy in Victoria 3 is to take peasants and make them into productive members of society, such as laborers or farmers or clerks or machinists or whatever. Peasants are like pretty much always bad.
Rather than being per se bad, peasants are instead an untapped resource. Peasants are workers that are not working, and they don't pay very many taxes. They don't buy very many goods, and they contribute very few goods to the market. A big effect peasants can have is that they tend to have a low standard of living, and in so doing they depress wages in the state, because remember, wages are determined by a combination of job quality and average standard of living in a state. For all these reasons, peasants are bad. Luckily, we can turn them into productive members of society by just making buildings, as peasants will happily begin working better jobs at proper buildings once the jobs become available. While you have peasants in the state, you shouldn't have any issues employing up for buildings, and the point at which you run out of peasants is when your economy may begin to stall out or stagnate. However, it should be noted that this is not a bad thing. In Victoria 3, if you're stalling out your economy, then you know that you're doing at least one thing right, which is that you're getting rid of your peasants.
Basically, point is, we like making jobs because peasants don't buy stuff, and because workers actually pay taxes. Like, they pay more taxes. And when they pay taxes, we can use their money. Does that make sense? That's the big lesson here.
Yes.
Yes.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
I just am so excited about this that it has made me sick.
Yeah. Okay.
When an economy begins to stall out, we don't just give up at that point though. We want to continue growing, and if we're out of domestic demand for goods because everyone is employed and wages are stagnating, we can generate new demand via trade. Before talking about trade, I posed the question to the class about why trade could be useful.
What do you think is the purpose behind trade? Just off the top of your head.
It's to make the government all of the money.
Okay, and Jillyeon, what do you think is the purpose of trade?
To access goods that we don't already have it or can't produce naturally in our land.
That's true. That's correct. That is one reason to do trading.
Jillyeon made the excellent point that we can access goods which we don't have access to naturally, and that is correct. However, a big purpose for trade that should not go unnoticed is that trade creates demand for goods without requiring any new employment. Well, not quite, since trade centers do employ some pops, but a trade center only employs about 1,000 people, whereas most buildings employ at a baseline 5,000 people, so you're able to adjust prices on goods without taking up new labor. From here, we should talk about specialization in the economy, which is best shown by companies. Specialization plays a huge role in trade and is also important for the real meta game of Victoria 3.
What point can you invest in NVIDIA?
In NVIDIA? That's going to take about another like 100 and... do the math. 170-ish years?
I don't want to do math. That's why I play Crusader Kings.
I was telling myself to do the math, but yeah,
Okay,
CK3
okay.
doesn't require much math, but yeah. You gotta wait about 170 years to invest in NVIDIA. Which,
There's
actually,
a-
I'm glad you brought up NVIDIA, because we can talk about companies now. And we can talk about the reason why you might actually want to increase the price on a good. So, a company is a group of people that own particular industries. And we see as Belgium, we start the game with the Société Anonyme Jean Coquerel. That's funny because that's an English name, but it's a French company, so I always pronounce it like it's a French name, but it's an English name. But the I guess should be Société Anonyme John Cockerell, which sounds really fucking stupid. But regardless,
Yeah,
okay.
owned. Hear that, John Cockerell?
Yeah, John Cock, real. But he, his company gets to own tools and steel and motors. Okay, and when it does that, companies, because of course, again, Victoria 3 is a very capitalist game. Never forget. Okay, the companies are extremely ridiculously efficient. So if you look at the throughput on this tooling workshop, it gets 15% more throughput because it's owned by a company. Now, what is throughput? Right? What is throughput? Throughput is an increase to both the input goods and the output goods consumed by a building, but it does not increase the wages.
Throughput is important for one very particular reason: efficiency of construction. A tooling workshop costs 600 points to build. Let's assume you have 30 construction points. That means it'll take you 20 weeks to build one. If a tooling workshop has, let's say, 5% throughput, That means it's contributing 5% more demand for goods via its inputs and 5% more supply of goods via its outputs. Compared to a tooling workshop with no throughput, we're still spanning the same 600 construction points, but we're instead consuming and creating fewer goods, meaning that building is creating less economic output in general per construction point, and perhaps even more importantly, per worker. Companies do two things that tie into this relationship. They add huge throughput to buildings, and when companies make buildings using the private queue, their construction efficiency is much higher than yours, so they spend fewer construction points too. Thus, specialization is important, because if we have a company that controls a particular industry and then use trade to keep that industry profitable, we can get a larger number of goods, and by extension profits, out of the same number of workers and construction points. Of course, the reason this might not work is that if we flood the market with one good, it might not be very profitable, and its inputs might not be very present in our nation. That's where trade comes in. Trade, as I mentioned before, lets us create more demand for goods. So we can tank the price on a particular good, and then via trade, keep the price high enough that our buildings don't lose profits. How reliant you'll be on trade will depend on the size of your economy. As Belgium, our economy is tiny, so we will very quickly flood the market with iron if we spam out all the iron possible using our company, but if we were playing as Britain, our market would include all of India, Canada, and the British Isles themselves, meaning it will take a long time to run out of domestic demand. To summarize, companies use construction points and labor more efficiently, and they often depend on trade to stay profitable depending on the size of the market. Something which I didn't talk about in the stream, by the way, simply because I forgot, was company charters. In truth, charters aren't very complicated. Investment charters allow companies to build new headquarters in other nations with whom you have investment rights, but that's a more advanced concept, so don't worry about it for now. Trade rights let companies own trade centers, which makes them more efficient. Colonization rights let a company colonize a state, usually in Africa, and then once they finish the colony, they make a new nation akin to the East India Company. Industry rights give access to another industry for a company, and the ones you can choose are predefined per company. Finally, monopolies make it so that no one else can build or purchase industries of a particular type, and the price on the goods produced in those industries are increased as monopolies simply raise all prices. Quick heuristics. Monopolies are very good because they keep prices high. Industry charters are really nice for making your companies more flexible. Colonization charters are useless, but funny for roleplay for sure. Trade rights are nice for one company to help maximize your trade, and investment charters are very strong if you take the time to get investment rights in other nations, but otherwise are a bit extraneous. If you're a new player, I would focus just on monopolies and industry charters.
Honestly, I'm gonna be real with you, okay? Listen, the teacher's taking the mask off right now. I'm doing like a terrible job of explaining everything right now.
It's a lot. I mean, I think you're doing a good job. It's just very involved.
Well, I think I'm like making things overly complicated because, you know, it's not actually that important.
I really need to emphasize how chaotic the stream was. I'm much better at expressing myself with the time to write out my ideas first, so Jillyeon and Lemon Cake, and any other stream watchers, if you found the stream difficult to learn from, let this video be your far more effective alternative. Also, thanks for sticking with me so far. I hope you're picking up some good info. One last note on companies and then some extraneous information before we move on to another topic. Some companies can produce prestige goods, and prestige goods are really cool because you can rename them. That sounds like a joke, but I'm telling you, the joy of naming your goods to give them some personality is not to be underestimated. Not all companies make prestige goods, but if a company does have a prestige good available, then keep that in mind when you decide what companies to choose from. Prestige goods mechanically increase the throughput on buildings which they're an input for, they get more trade advantage when used to trade, and they increase the standard of living for pops that consume them if they're consumable goods. For military prestige goods, they also increase the stats on your army. I want to add here a note about trade advantage, which I didn't talk about much in this video, and that's because, I'll just be real with you, if you're new to Victoria 3, don't worry about the super specific numbers too much. Trade advantage does matter, but you know what matters more than trade advantage? Just making a lot of a good. If you're curious about trade advantage, just mouse over the number in your trade center and see what it's doing. This advice extends out to much of Victoria 3. Don't be afraid to read the tooltips. There's so much information to find in this game if you're willing to explore the tooltips, and although some of them are not helpful, a lot of them really are. For example, this trade advantage tooltip is informing me that if I want more advantage, I should put interest down in markets where I'm trading. We haven't covered interests, but we'll get there. The final note on trade is tariffs and subventions. Tariffs are a way to reduce trade volume by adding taxes to trades. This will give you some money for your budget, but reduce the size of trades because they won't be as profitable if they have to pay tariffs. Subventions are the inverse of this, as they will make you pay a little bonus to all trades of a particular good to encourage more trade, costing your budget money, but smoothing out the process. If you're new to the game, just ignore these for the most part, or rather, better yet, experiment with them and understand their true purpose. Tariffs and subventions are for guiding trade and manipulating prices more so than actually generating money for your budget. Yes, tariffs make money, but the additional profits from untariffed trade will likely be more worthwhile than tariff income by itself. Okay, so let's move on to a new chapter now. With the advice I've given you for Victoria 3's economy, you should now be able to construct a specialized economy which focuses on employing all the peasants and exporting a specialized company good which generates investment pool and income taxes to help expand your nation. Later on in the video, I'll talk about more advanced tactics, but that comes in the synthesis section of the tutorial where we use all our lessons to implement effective strategies across multiple realms of play. It's time to talk about pops now. The next section we're going to talk about is the pops themselves. So this is the stuff that I think will be important, not as important as the economy. I tried to order this by what's the most important. So the economy is kind of like pretty much everything, but the people in the economy also kind of matter, which is a funny thing to say. Let's take a look at the UI on a particular pop. Let's take a look at these Wallonian laborers. They have all these numbers. What do all these numbers mean? Okay. Population's how many of them there are. They make money, okay, so they make wages, and then they get modifiers on the wages. And you'll notice these dependent wages. This is meant to represent, basically having a wife around the house, in theory, does help you economically because she, takes care of housework that you don't have to take care of, so you can spend more hours working. I don't know. Dependent wages are meant to represent, the women and the children of the family who are able to, through little jobs here and there, maybe they're making jewelry on Etsy, maybe they're running a newspaper route if they're a child, whatever. They make a little bit of money, but it's not...
The 2 jobs women and children can have.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. That's all they can do, okay? And this represents the money they make from that kind of stuff, so that's why it's there. But in reality, the only people working are the actual workforce, but this is meant to, it's an abstraction. Yeah, as it mentioned slaves, he's dodging the issue. Okay, slaves. So what's cool about slaves? Don't clip that. What's cool about slaves, I said it again, is that half of them are the workforce. So that means that when you import a slave, they don't get, their women don't get to not have a job. They can't sell things on Etsy, they have to go work in the fields. So that's great, because that means you get twice as many workers out of them than you do other work stuff. The problem is that they have no SOL, and they don't really buy stuff. As you can see, looking at their pop income, they actually have exactly £0 per week of money.
Teacher, you said they have 0, but they actually have 6.
Where's the 6?
How do we get it to 0? It says struggling 6.
No, that's their SOL, it's not their income.
Yeah, but you said they have no SOL, but they have 6
So this is because
we can get rid of.
What this 6 is coming from is that their owners are buying them stuff. So their owners, these guys consume things that are bought for them by their owners, rather than them buying it themselves. Yeah, I know, it's weird why they would do that, but they just do. They don't pay taxes. Yeah, exactly. That's the big problem, is they don't pay any taxes. People who don't pay taxes are evil. Exactly. They don't pay any taxes. But slavery is a funny meme, but it tends to be pretty bad. It tends to not be very good.
You should clip that.
I've actually extensively mentioned this in my slavery video, but yeah, it's terrible. We want to get rid of it.
You know, I was enjoying memeing about this with Lemon and Jillyeon, but actually a big drawback of slaves is indeed that they don't pay taxes, because the wage they would have made is instead turned into excess profits for the owners of the building, although there is the consolation prize that their owners will buy them some goods to keep the SOL at a survivable level. Nonetheless, like we discovered in the economics section of the video, capitalists making money isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, slavery ultimately is bad because slaves have low SOL, dragging wages down and causing radicalism, but they also can't work better jobs. So as the game progresses and we get better and better production methods which demand engineers and other high quality qualifications, the slaves are less and less useful. This dovetails nicely into talking about radicals and loyalists for pops. Your primary measure of success with regards to the economy is GDP, but with respect to pops, it's the standard of living, loyalist, and radical count. When standard of living is high, your pops are doing well. They gain standard of living by having excess money. At each level of standard of living, pops will buy goods and then use the remaining money to attempt to raise their standard of living. With each level, pops consume more goods. Thus, your goal, if standard of living is your objective, is to look at what goods your pops consume and then make those goods cheaper, as well as to make good jobs for your pops. Whenever pops gain a level, they become loyalists. Whenever they lose a level, they become radicals. Well, a fraction of them do, but you get it. In my opinion, good jobs are much more important for this purpose, and that is the crux of pops in general, their job.
Remember when I mentioned Victoria 3 is a very capitalist game? I actually lied, because Victoria 3 is a totally communist game, in that your job determines everything about you in this game, like literally everything. Engineers, they're always racists. We know this from real life. They also like to invest money into crypto. That's what industrialists do, okay? But if you look at like a machinist, they like to join unions. That's what they like to do. If you look at a shopkeeper, they also like to be racists. Everyone knows this is how it goes. And in case you're wondering, why is he saying this? This sounds really weird. It's because interest group alignment is basically just determined by your profession. So we see here that petite bourgeoisie have a 60 base attraction, just like all pops have 60. But for being a shopkeeper, it's plus 150. That just like, boom, you're a shopkeeper, you want to be part of the petite bourgeoisie, just period. And that applies to pretty much all the pop. So if we look at like engineers over here, these guys, they are also kind of part of the petite bourgeoisie because engineers give them a little bit of attraction to it. But with industrialists, you see plus 88 engineers profession. Engineers are always part of the industrialists. So the job determines everything.
Jobs are deeply important because they determine the wage of the pop, the ideology of the pop, and what production methods they can work with. This leads us into interest groups, which are representations of the political forces and ideologies of your people. In the domestic politics section, we'll get more into that stuff, but the main takeaway I want you to get from this section is that jobs are very important and that you manipulate what jobs are available in your nation by building buildings with the jobs that you want. If you want to be more multicultural, create high-paying jobs for minorities. If you want to give power to your intelligentsia, make more universities which employ academics. If you want a more agrarian society, make more farms. It makes sense intuitively, I'd say, but it's important to note that the political alignment of your pops will adjust over time as you get new society technologies. For example, the labor movement technology allows laborers and machinists to start joining the trade unions, as they tend to be mostly apolitical or support the church before that technology. Like I mentioned before, check out the tooltips on stuff. Read and learn by looking at what the game tells you. If you read the wage tooltips, you'll see how much more money engineers and machinists make, but beyond that, you'll feel how much more money they make by just comparing their standards of living.
A person who is not a slave can go to school and they can learn how to do things that are more interesting than just laboring. Qualifications are, I'm going to tell you this right now, just like in terms of how the current game is. If your literacy rate is more than like 40%, you never have to think about qualifications ever. It's literally like completely not even part of the game because you have enough literacy that everyone can do even the most advanced of jobs, because there are only 3 tiers of job. There's like laborers, machinists, and engineers. To be a capitalist, you have to be rich or an engineer, and like it's like, don't worry about it, okay? If this number is above 40. If you're playing a country that you should be playing if you're new to the game, this number will probably be above 40. The exception is like countries like Spain and Portugal. They have kind of low literacy, but even then it's not even that low. But like, I wouldn't worry about qualifications unless you're playing as like China. Here you have 50% literacy. You're like, you're done.
Qualifications are a weird mechanic, and as such I've introduced them into the video rather weirdly as well. Qualifications are generated for pops every week, and you get more based on how much literacy your pops have. As such, we should also talk about literacy. Literacy does 3 major things to your pops. First, it lets your pops get qualifications, as mentioned, but second, it increases their minimum required standard of living, and third, it decreases their birth rate. Too busy reading books to have kids, I guess. Jokes aside, literacy is generally worth getting because the average literacy of your nation determines how quickly you can unlock technology, and that is very important, even if it means your pops want more stuff and have fewer kids. Anyway, the reason I say qualifications are weird is because it feels like it's a super easy mechanic to have plenty of them. Like I mentioned in the stream, if literacy is above 40%, you probably can entirely ignore qualifications.
You see what I'm saying? Say yes.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Beyond that, we can talk about tolerance, culture, faith, and migration at this point, which are all very important mechanics in Victoria 3.
Now, what if we want to get more people? What are some ways we can get more people into our country?
Decreasing literacy rate. Oh, into
Real?
our country.
Real?
Invading other countries and taking their pops.
Also real? Yes, these are all correct answers. Like, unironically, the decreased literacy one is correct. So continue.
Is this perhaps a segue into a section about immigration?
Yes, it is. Congratulations, you win the golden star. We have to talk about how
go.
immigration works. there's this thing called cultural communities. Okay, and this is also dice. This is also gambling, by the way, is cultural communities. Pops that live in a location, or I'm speaking EU5, they live in a state, okay? They will generate a cultural community. And this means that essentially they have people here. Like that's, I don't know how to explain what it is beyond just like, there's at least one person lives in this location who is of a culture. So like we have a Wallonian culture community here because there's at least one Wallonian here. A better example is we have an Ashkenazi cultural community here. There's only 1,000 of them, so 0.03% of the population is Ashkenazi Jews, but there's at least one of them. So there's an Ashkenazi Jew. Pops can only move to locations where they have a cultural community, except through mass migrations. That's a different concept though. Pops can only move to locations in which they have a cultural community. So let's say, for example, I was looking at Gallery here. Unfortunately, like I think that there are North German communities everywhere. So, here's a good way to explain it. There's no English cultural community in Wallonia. So if you look here, there's not a single Englishman. There are apparently 0 Franco-Canadians. I don't know why this is here. This is weird. There's no English pops here. So English people from Flanders cannot go to Wallonia because there's no cultural community. Cultural communities randomly generate, completely randomly, one will just spawn if you have pops of a certain culture in your market. That's another note to add. Pops can only move within the same market. So if you look at our markets, Belgium's market is just these 3 states. It's literally Flanders, Wallonia, and Gallery. Up here, pops can only move among these states. Again, except mass migrations, but we're getting there. These are the three things, okay? They can move between these states. If we wanted to get pops in from like Britain, let's say, they cannot cross over here unless they mass migrate. Okay, now if you look at the mass migration map mode, okay, this is basically like a big green map mode that shows places that are attractive to like people. So if you look at the United States of America, they tend to have a very high mass migration attraction, although right now Canada has a slightly higher one, I think. No, never mind, America is slightly higher. I was hoping Canada would take the W, but alas, they are not. I think America's probably number 1 right now. They tend to be number 1. And this means that people that are like, living in countries that have lower migration attraction, they're going to want to move to that location. So for example, here in Belgium, I've got low mass migration attraction. I have 11.7. So my pops might want to leave to America. That could actually be a thing that happens, and in which case I'll be losing population. I'll be very sad. People like to come to America. The reason why is because of arable land. If we look at the attraction, arable land is a big part of it. This is unused arable land employment plus 10. If we compare that to, let's say, like Wallonia, ours, we only have 0.1 unused arable land employment. So that's kind of like what determines it.
I did a pretty good job explaining on stream, but to add some details, mass migrations can go to places where they'd have at least some acceptance. So if you're playing a European nation with national supremacy as your law, you'll never be able to get Chinese mass migrations. The exact bar that you need to meet is 30. If you have no border controls on, then you can conquer Chinese states to bring them into your market, and then they can, via a random chance, perhaps generate a cultural community in your states and then migrate over naturally. Cultural communities are weird in that I generally don't know what influences the chances of them spawning, but they sort of just happen sometimes. If you're doing a migration-heavy game, getting cultural communities in high-value states is very important, and yet you have little to no influence over whether or not it happens, so cross your fingers and hope, I guess. There's also one more mechanic which I failed to mention during the stream, and that's obsessions and taboos. Certain cultures and faiths have obsessions with, or taboos for, particular goods. The best example I can think of is that all Muslim faiths have a taboo on liquor and wine, while the French culture starts the game with an obsession with wine. Religious obsessions and taboos don't change over the course of the game, but cultural ones do. The most salient example of how this affects the economy is that Han Pops have an obsession with opium, and that means they're willing to buy way more of that good, and they'll choose to buy it at a higher price to the detriment of other needs. Meanwhile, Muslim Pops will very rarely buy liquor or wine, even if it's cheaper than other things that could fill their needs. Depending on the obsession and the size of the culture, you could run an economy on the back of an obsession, and this is indeed what Britain does in most games when they grab a treaty port in China and use it to export opium from India at huge profits.
Another way to increase migration is through a decree. Someone mentioned decrees earlier. Decrees are kind of like general buffs that you can give to your states in return for authority, and authority is generated by laws. So like monarchies have authority, This is just like a number that you make by having like certain laws. And then you can put decrees down. So one of them is a greener grass campaign, which increases migration attraction. This will help you get more migrants in.
There are many decrees in the game, but they're really straightforward, so I don't really see the point in going in depth on them. Spend authority, get bonuses in particular states, that's all. They are important, but they don't need much explaining. Let's go over the key takeaways for POPs in Victoria 3. POPs are the main drivers of politics in the game, and they also drive the economy working in buildings. POPs gain and lose standard of living based on how much money they make via their jobs and the cost of the stuff they buy. POP jobs more or less define how they'll act and what they'll do, as well as how rich they'll be. POPs need qualifications to work better jobs, but as they gain literacy, they are harder to please and reproduce less. POPs migrate according to their relative standard of living, looking to move to places with higher migration attraction, but they have restrictions on when and where they can migrate. Migration attraction is mostly determined by standard of living and available employment. Finally, POPs of certain cultures or faiths may have different consumption patterns based on their obsessions and taboos. Wow, that's a lot. Yes, POPs are complicated, but it's very satisfying to work on improving the lives of your little guys, and you can see them generate more and more money. POPs are closely connected to the politics of your nation, so of course, naturally, it only makes sense for us to do a chapter about domestic politics, so that's what we're covering next. Thankfully, this stuff isn't very complicated, and in fact, I won't even use any stream clips. I'm just going to explain it to you, fully scripted. As mentioned in the POPs section, a POP's job determines their political alignment. Their wealth determines their political power. So, rich people have more influence than poor people, as would be expected. However, the disparity in political power from wealth can be reduced by using voting laws. The more suffrage you grant your people via your laws, the more that each individual vote counts for more than wealth. That being said, even at universal suffrage, wealth still affects political power, which I think can be abstracted as rich people being able to lobby politicians or buy ads and billboards and all that. Makes sense, right? POPs put their political power behind an interest group, and that power is called clout. The clout of an interest group directly translates to how much power they have in the government, and that translates into how much they will help or hinder law changes that you attempt to do. Each interest group has a set of ideologies which define what laws they want for the government. Rather obviously, the church has the moralist ideology, meaning they endorse state religion and do not endorse state atheism. They are also pious, meaning they want religious schools. You'll notice that some ideologies are in red and some are in blue. Red ones are inherent to the interest group and do not change, but can be superseded by the blue ideology, which is the leader ideology. A leader is the guy in charge of the interest group, and the leader comes with an additional ideology of their own. In the case of my church, we have Nimi here, who is a reformer. As a reformer, he wants cultural exclusion, primary schools, and limited women's rights. The women's rights one is interesting because it conflicts with the church's patriarchal ideology. At a baseline, the church does not want women to have rights, but since their current leader is a reformer, that ideology's preferences supersede the red ones, and so the church will, while this character leads them, support an expansion of women's rights. One day, when Nimi dies, he'll be replaced by a random leader, and that means there's yet another gambling mechanic in Victoria 3. Looking at the leader ideology chances, there's a pretty good chance we get a theocrat, and we can see how that chance is calculated by mousing over it. Looks like it's because of pressure from the Catholic traditionalist movement, but we'll talk about movements in just a second. There's one more stat on interest groups to note, and that's their approval. When they don't approve of you, they apply a debuff, which in the case of the church is an education access debuff. This directly translates to lower literacy across the whole nation, as education access is how POPs gain literacy. On the other hand, at 5 approval, they would give me some extra authority, and then at 10 approval, they'd give me extra birth rate. Each interest group has different buffs and debuffs and different ideologies, so feel free to, on your own, look over each interest group and get an idea of what they're all about. The 3 main things to pay attention to for an interest group is their clout, their approval, and their leader ideology. Interest groups represent top-down government, in the sense that these are the groups that actually run the country, and they can work to pass laws using their clout. Each clout percentage directly translates to your chances of changing laws in yet another one of Victoria 3's gambling systems. In my current game here, I'm trying to pass a law called laissez-faire, and we can see that it has support from the industrialists and petite bourgeoisie, but it's opposed by the landowners and farmers. The industrialists support it because of their inherent laissez-faire ideology, while the petite bourgeoisie support it because their leader is a market liberal. When passing a law, a success pushes you one step forward in the process, which in the case of my nation is composed of the introduction, consideration, and adoption steps. These are just names, and ultimately there's no difference between any of them. For example, in America, they're currently trying to pass tenant farmers, and their law steps are called sponsorship, study, and voting. The names are just names based on your distribution of power. The success chance is how likely on each rotation of the blue circle that you can see filling that you'll move to the next step. A stall is the chance that you get an event which hinders passing the law, and then if you mouse over the law passing box on the side, you can see the debate and advance chances. Debates will be either good or bad, or might ask you to make some kind of sacrifice to gain success chance, while advancements don't push you to the next phase, but give you some kind of bonus success or a benefit to the nation. All of this is done via random events on each phase, so you sit there, wait for the blue ring to fill, and when it does, an event happens or you get a success. The latest mechanic added just a few days ago with Iberian Twilight's accompanying free patch is the negotiation button. By clicking this, you open up a list of interest groups that can be negotiated with to potentially put their clout behind a law they'd otherwise not support. In the case of my laissez-faire debate here, only the armed forces are willing to negotiate. The amenability number has to be above 25 for them to be willing to negotiate at all, and the lower the number is, the more they'll demand when you do negotiate. So, beyond interest groups, how else can we change laws? Well, you might have noticed this big circle with revolutionary looking vibes, and it's got a red circle filling up inside it. This is an insurrectionary political movement and represents the political aspirations of pops that are working outside the government. These are called political movements, and we have a big list of them in our government tab. Much like interest groups, political movements have ideologies which they will put their weight behind. Their support number is akin to clout, and activism is akin to approval. Political movements which reach 60% activism will become insurrectionary, meaning they are threatening civil war, and as such, every time that red circle fills, a bad event happens. If they reach 100% activism, they will start a civil war, which if you lose, you game over, by the way. Much like how pops support interest groups, they also support political movements, and their support of political movements is independent of voting, meaning even in a totally authoritarian state, political movements can still rise up. The primary source of activism for political movements is if their supporting pops are radicals, and if you're passing laws they don't like. If their activism is above 25%, they will use their support number to affect your chance to pass laws. So we can see that in the stall chance for my laissez-faire law, there's an additional 5% added because the labor movement has 94% activism and 5% support. Okay, so that was a lot of information, and we should probably take a second to breathe and look at a simpler mechanic. Legitimacy is a very simple one. This represents how respected and, well, legitimate your government is. What determines legitimacy is based on your distribution of power laws. So do you have elections? Do you have a king whose interest group is your main source of legitimacy? How high are your taxes? Among a handful of other things. In the case of Burgundy here, I have autocracy, so most of my legitimacy is derived from my government matching my king's ideology. He's a member of the petite bourgeoisie, so if I want more legitimacy, I should have a government with just them in charge. For other nations with voting laws, this will be more complicated. Here's what I'll say about the matter. First of all, don't change governments over and over, because every time you do, you gain radicals and lose loyalists. Second of all, don't think too much about legitimacy. Instead, just click Reform Government and pick from the list of governments that the game presents to you. These are the 3 most legitimate governments you can form at any given time. The benefits of high legitimacy are faster law changes and chiefly more loyalist generation. The negatives of low legitimacy are losses of interest group approval, slower law changes, and more radicals. There you go, nice and simple, eh? How about an even simpler mechanic? Institutions. Certain laws create institutions in your nation, such as education. In the Institution tab, you can spend bureaucracy to increase institution size, and in so doing get some buffs, but you have to maintain the bureaucracy for it. Bureaucracy comes from a special building called a government administration, which is always government run, and which can get very expensive. So essentially, to run a proper healthcare or education system, you need to pay for it. Most institutions are pretty good and worthwhile, but be careful about how expensive bureaucracy can be as you play. Don't forget to keep the price of paper low to keep your costs down, by the way. With that, we have covered all the domestic politics mechanics, barring Agitators, which is a DLC feature, but essentially, if you want, you can invite people to your country, and they'll start or support political movements. For example, I could invite Louis-Napoleon Bonaparte to my nation, and he would give some support to the reactionary movement. Once an agitator is in your country, you can make them a general or grant them leadership of an interest group, which can make for some funny memes. Great, so in review, you've learned how interest groups gain clout, how interest groups impact laws that you can change, what political movements are and how they influence law changes, what legitimacy is, how institutions and bureaucracy work, and finally, agitators. I will, as usual, remind you to read tooltips. If you want to better understand how clout is calculated, mouse over the clout button and take a look. For a quick example, I want to know why the industrialists are so strong, so I mouse over and see they derive their political power from wealth. This makes sense because when I look at their population, we get a tooltip explaining that the supporters of the industrialists are mostly capitalists and engineers, and I can then go to the population tab and see an exact list of all the people that support the industrialists, and then I can look at those pops and see how their political strength is calculated. In truth though, who would go through all that trouble? Sometimes you don't need to know how something works, you just need to know how to work with it, and this tutorial should have taught you that. Anyway, we're going to move on to a whole new sector of playing Victoria 3 now. And that's that so far we focused only on the internal. We focused on things like, your country, things like your economy, things like your pops. But now we got to think about interacting with the rest of the world, right? Diplomacy. What are your impressions of Victoria 3's diplomacy systems? We'll start with Jillyeon.
I literally have no impressions about diplomacy. I didn't realize it was in this game.
Insane. Okay. Lemon Cake? He's muted. He must not be here.
How do I say this without being super obnoxious? I think it depends on how you define the system. Because if you include the DLC diplomacy stuff, which they expanded recently, as part of the diplomacy instead of including as part of warfare or peace deals.
Right.
If you don't include that as part of diplomacy, I think it's actually quite lacking compared to other Paradox titles. But if you include that part, which is kind of like more warfare-based diplomacy, but still, if you want to categorize that as diplomacy, I think it's one of the better games for diplomacy.
Victoria 3's diplomacy does indeed exist, and Lemon brings up the division between war and diplomacy, which is an interesting choice. In Victoria 3, war and diplomacy are very tightly tied together, in that most of what you can do with war, you can do with diplomacy instead. The purpose of diplomacy in Victoria 3 is to get what you want without war, as war can be bad, or it can also be good, that just depends on the market. We'll expand on that in the war section. Back to diplomacy, there isn't actually too much to cover here. The big thing to go over is the difference between relations and attitude. There are two critical things with regards to diplomacy, and that's the difference between attitude and relations. For my CK3 players, your relations are like opinion in CK3. So like when you host a feast and you gain 15 opinion with a random character, that's like your relationship, okay? The attitude is not really well translated into like from a CK3 metaphor, but think of it more like kind of the personality that character, or in this case country, has towards you. So Britain here has amicable relationship with me, so they kind of like me, right? But their attitude is protective, so they're going to try to keep me safe from other people. Compare that to the Netherlands, with whom I have poor relations, and their attitude's antagonistic. Why does this distinction matter? It's because the relationship doesn't actually mean anything. All that matters is the attitude. And a good way to show that is probably through the Ottomans, who are neutral with me, but who are wary. So despite the fact that we don't have bad relations, the Ottomans have a wary attitude. So they're just kind of like, I don't want to deal with you. I don't want to talk to you because I'm wary of you. Okay. Russia also is antagonistic, by the way. I'm trying to think of a good example where these things don't line up. So this is a good example. Sweden is neutral. They have the exact same relationship with me as the Ottomans, and yet the Ottomans are wary, while Sweden is cooperative. And this is because of the attitude score. This is the most, arcane, I don't know what has caused Sweden to view me as a natural ally. I could not tell you. It's probably informed by, these things, these behaviors, but I don't really, I don't know. This number, this plus 75, there's no way to explain where the plus 75 comes from, okay? It's just there, right? Whereas the Ottomans, they have minus 75 because they view me as a natural enemy. Why is that? I couldn't tell you. They just are. They both have maintained balance of power. So I the only difference is conservative agenda versus enact Tanzimat reforms. By the way, these three things here, these are likened to CK3's character traits. So you know how if you have a character who's ambitious or they're deceitful or whatever, you can somewhat predict their behavior. Again, CK3, it's hard to predict AI behavior, but you can somewhat predict it based on their personality traits. That's what these things down here are. These expand resource industries, enact Tanzimat reforms. We know that the Ottomans are going to invest in natural resources because they have this behavior on them. We discovered the two most important things to know in order to predict AI behavior: their attitude towards your nation and their behaviors. Victoria 3 displaying the AI behaviors like that is honestly one of the better features of the game's diplomacy, except that the only way to know how they'll act on account of those behaviors is to have played the game enough to just kind of know what that will push them towards. For example, Britain often has the economic imperialism behavior, and that means that they want to acquire subjects to expand their market, but they're also okay with being diplomatic towards nations who they can't subjugate but whose markets could be useful to them. In some tooltips, you might see modifiers that come from these behaviors. It does happen here and there, but for the most part, understanding these behaviors is a vibe. You can definitely make some guesses by looking at the descriptions on them though, so it's better than nothing. Quick note when it comes to relations, their value comes only in thresholds, which is to say that you gain positive modifiers towards attitude and diplomacy with a nation if your relations have reached 0, 20, 50, or 80. Being at 70 is the same as being at 51 for all intents and purposes. Being at 5 is the same as being at 0, and so on. The same goes for the negative relations, with minus 20, minus 50, and minus 80 being the thresholds. Beyond those very important things, there's another diplomacy mechanic which matters a lot called treaties. So let's say you click on Britain, you want to draft a treaty. In here, you can do things with them. Now, the AI is very easily swayed by the false gold of promising to not charge tariffs, which, you know, like, it's whatever, but basically you can get alliances, you can get them to, like, change their laws, this kind of stuff. It's like, the treaty system is cool, but it feels a little bit limited. You can ask for goods, so you can do, like, trade through this. Remember we talked about trade a while ago? Trade in this game is actually fully autonomous, so you make trade centers. We can actually show this off a little bit. You can make trade centers, like down here, and you just click on these pluses, and it's like, yeah, woohoo, like trade center, right? But you don't control what goods get taken in. The market's going to decide what goods get taken in and what goods get taken out based on prices. But you can, if you want, click on a country, go to draft treaty, and then just be like, hey, like, give me something. Good transfer. I want your clothes. That sounds really weird, but we can ask them for 300 clothes, and then they might just give that to us without even asking for anything back. But I might say to them, okay, you give me clothes, and in return, I'll give you a monopoly on trade centers, or whatever, right? That kind of stuff. For the most part, you don't really do, like, a ton with this. The big thing is you want to get, like, alliances. So we can't get an alliance here because Britain already has an alliance, I believe is why. Let's check. They do already have an alliance with the Ottomans, so that means we can't get an alliance with them. You can only have one alliance at a time. You can have as many defensive pacts as you want. But that's sort of how that works. Treaties are definitely an interesting game mechanic in that you have quite a few options, but a lot of them are never going to happen. The AI will very rarely trade states. The AI will almost never grant you monopolies. The AI is easily manipulated, and so on. That's the fault of the AI rather than the mechanic, which is solid in and of itself. One feature of treaties that should be noted is the binding period, wherein the treaty must be upheld, but it can still be broken. Whoever breaks it takes some negatives to their diplomatic reputation across the map, and severely harms relations with the nation they broke the treaty with, depending on how long the binding period had left when you broke it. Different than a treaty is a power block, and I have to yap about this without the help of past me from the stream because I forgot to talk about power blocks back then. A power block is a collection of countries that align themselves along an axis depending on what the power block is about. There are trade leagues, military alliances, religious convocations, cultural unions, ideological unions, and sovereign empires, with each one having different bonuses. I'm not going to go over everything with power blocks because there's a lot going on there, but essentially, the block leader works to expand their influence over nations to pull them into the union, and having more members gets you more bonuses. A stronger union can implement mandates, which gives bonuses to the leader and the members of the power block. Nations within a power block can struggle for control over it by having competing prestige numbers, but yeah, if you're new to the game, you'll probably end up in someone else's power block, or else you'll just make your own and mostly leave it be, grabbing some bonuses when you can. Power blocks are a lot of fun because you can pick your own statue, give it a name and color and coat of arms, just cool stuff overall, really cool mechanic. Since I talked about influencing other nations, we should talk about interests now, which although a basic mechanic, there's more going on there than you might realize. You can declare interests, and what this is essentially you doing, blue means you already have an interest, but you can remove it, so you can click it to remove it or put it back. Green means you can put an interest there, and orange means that you have like a permanent interest, in the sense that like, my country is here, so how can I not have an interest in my home region, right? Like it's just of course you have an interest wherever you exist. If I declare an interest in, say, like Southern Africa, then I can interact with countries down here. So right now, I can't do anything with the Zulu because like we don't have an interest here. See, no neighbors with Zulu have interest, same strategic region. We can't click anything. We can't draft treaties because we have no interest with them.
If we wait until the interest gets activated, it takes a little while to activate. Here it is activating down here. Once it activates, now we have an interest down here, and suddenly these guys actually have opinions about me. So for example, now Cape Colony is cooperative, the Zulus are cooperative, Gaza's disinterested, they don't really care. But the people down here actually have interested with me, and now I can attack them with wars and stuff. That's like the big thing. That's what interests do. In terms of how to generate interests, we have to get a bigger navy. That's like the big way to do it. You can also gain rank. So right now we're a minor power. The more rank we gain, the more interests we get. Here we see major power, we get 3 maximum interests. And as a great power, you get like 4. Where is it? Great power, you get 6, sorry, you get 6 at great power. So you can become a bigger country, you get more interests. Your navy also gives you more, but I don't know actually how to check. Like, how do I check how many interests I have? I don't know how to check the tooltip properly, but basically we can have more interest. I think it's this one, there we go. So yeah, navy power projection also gives you more, and technology. I've never seen that meter before. There's a lot of UI you will have never seen in this game, okay? There's a lot of UI no one ever looks at. The other resource with regards to diplomacy is influence. So you see here that we're spending influence on stuff in our treaty. So we have a trade privilege with Britain, and that is shown here. It's costing me 90 influence to maintain this treaty. It's costing Britain 75. How do we get more influence? We have to declare rivals. So if we go into our diplomatic lens, we go to our diplomatic actions, we can declare rivalries. Every rival that you make gives you more influence. So we could rival Portugal for 400 influence. Sure, let's do that. We could rival 2 Sicilies. Let's do that. Like, sure, right? When you rival someone, rather obviously, it like ruins the attitude. So if you look here, this should change. And I'm still just cautious. I guess he doesn't really care much about me. But basically, like, it'll harm our relations. As you can see here, our relations are slowly worsening down to -20 because of our rivalry. I think like in this case they haven't rivaled me back, so this guy just rivaled me, so he should hate me. See, now he's antagonistic because he rivaled me. Now we have rivalry, right? That's how it works. That's more or less all of diplomacy, except for I guess subjects. We can talk about subjects. For that, I'm going to swap over to Britain real quick, just for a second, to talk about Britain and their subjects. So when you have countries that are like, you know, subordinate to you, they have liberty desire. And this is something which I'm not going to cover too much because it just like, I don't know, it's not going to be that relevant to most people's playthroughs because most people when they're new to the game are not going to play Britain because it's a lot to manage. But essentially like liberty desire is them, if they want to get freedom or not, it's based on your economy, it's based on the army power, blah, 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 whatever. You have these buttons you can click and these will cost you influence as well. So you can see here, Britain's actually got a deficit of influence because they're spending too much because they have all this stuff they're trying to invest in. So we could, for example, maybe like get rid of this, and then that will, you know, fix that. And I'm speaking really quickly about it, but basically because most of these don't really matter that much. Like you can just sort of manage your subjects, and it costs you some influence to do that.
In all honesty, I think I have more to say about subjects. The nice thing about a subject is that they rule states for you and then pay you some money depending on what type of subject they are. Having more states is nice, but in order to tax a state, you must incorporate it, and incorporation costs bureaucracy, which is an expensive resource at times. Thus, a subject can be nice for taking over some land without needing to spend any bureaucracy to administrate it, while also recognizing that you won't be able to fully exploit the potential GDP and market there due to it being taxed by someone else. I like making subjects where possible because of roleplay opportunities too. It can be nice to imagine a puppet government in another nation or consider 2 nations coming together and working together. The previously mentioned power blocks also come into play here, as your subjects are automatically counted as power block members, and therefore you can beef up your power block by having lots of subjects. An important note about subjects and infamy, which we'll cover in the war section, is that when you have high infamy, your subjects get a lot more liberty desire, and as subjects gain liberty desire, they'll seek out other nations to support their independence. If you're not careful, one of your subjects could suddenly have the support of several great powers, and because of that, end up declaring war on you with a huge chain of alliances seemingly from nowhere. You gotta be real careful about that. Diplomacy overall is a lighter mechanic than it might seem, because in isolation it doesn't do much. But where diplomacy really enters the ring and becomes important is with regards to war, and this will surely be the most provocative chapter of the tutorial, given how maligned war is in Victoria 3. But before we dive into war, let's go over our key takeaways for diplomacy. Attitude and AI behaviors inform your ability to predict AI behavior. Power blocks are really fun and interesting. Our ability to conduct diplomacy is limited by influence, and we gain influence by rivaling people, which itself makes diplomacy harder. For that reason, we have to be careful with how much diplomacy we engage in, lest we be overwhelmed by rivalries. Subjects are a nice way to extract wealth from a region that you can't or don't want to integrate, but they can get rowdy if your rivals decide to support them and you accrue high infamy. With that, we're going to look at diplomacy's most important interweaved mechanic, and that is, of course, war. So how about we just actually get ourselves into a war? Let's attack the Netherlands. I think we have a truce, actually, so we can't. Yes, we do. We have a truce. 14 weeks. We'll just wait out the truce, then we'll attack the Netherlands. So we can get an idea of how war works. Okay, now we don't have a truce. So first of all, I guess you can't declare war on people if you have a truce. But we're going to declare a war against the Netherlands, our historical rival, of course. And you get this big list. This is a list of all the countries and what that have an interest here, and what they think potentially of the war starting. In original Victoria 3, they did not have this, by the way. Okay, yet another thing which is added in later Victoria 3 updates. It used to be you did this blind, and you just had to sort of guess what countries would think of you declaring a war. In this case, though, we can see that the game predicts that Sweden will join on Netherlands' side, and it predicts that Britain will kind of be ambivalent. They might join either side. We're not sure. Prussia is more likely to join our side. A couple different things going on here. The big thing, though, they have to consider, they gave you this mechanic, okay, but then they decided to make it not very useful, because this is not accounting for the fact that when I declare this play, this will happen. So when you have infamy generated by a diplomatic incident, which is just a word for a war, Victoria 3 likes to act like it has something different than wars, okay? But diplomatic plays are wars, but with a 100-day waiting period. That's all it is, okay? So when we declare this, the diplomatic incident will cause 25.4 infamy, which will damage relations by this much with all these countries. So if I click confirm, okay, give it a second. Now there's a diplomatic incident. It looks like, though, we might be able to still get Prussia to join us. Let's see. We'll talk about raising armies and stuff in a second. This is the sway button. So I want Prussia to help me in this war, because I think the Netherlands probably can kill me. So I can click this and see what they want. They'd be willing to help me if I become their protectorate, which is an interesting idea, by the way. It's an interesting concept. Or I can offer them an obligation. What is an obligation? It's basically like you owe them something, and that means they can click on stuff. Let's say like they want to do a treaty. You'll notice here like there's the owe obligation, ask for obligation. If you owe them an obligation, they'll have a button that says like call in obligation, and it gives you significant increased likelihood to accept the chance on the treaty. And if you say no to it, you get a repudiated obligation, blah, 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 who cares? You basically, it's an IOU, okay? We're going to offer Prussia an IOU. Now, it's important to note that by doing this, Prussia, like, might have enemies that want to stop them. So if we look at Prussia's, looks like Prussia actually gets along pretty okay with everyone, except for, like, France is kind of cautious. But let's say that Prussia had bad relations with Britain. Let's say that we're looking at Prussia's map mode right now, and they had a red color on Britain. I might have to keep in mind that if I bring if I bring Prussia in, they're kind of likely to maybe want to call Britain in against me, like the Netherlands might. But I think that we're safe in this case, so we're going to call on Prussia with an obligation. Well, state religion is passed, cool. So now, the Prussians are in the war, so they're going to help carry us in this war, and we'll talk about armies at this point. Diplomatic plays are a real doozy, and they're one of the most frustrating mechanics in Victoria 3 thanks to their unpredictability. There are a couple things I missed when talking about diplomatic plays back there, including being able to add war goals and being able to take primary war goals. In most diplomatic plays, there is at least one primary war goal, which is the one that the play started with. We can then add secondary goals, which we get if we win the war. During the 100-day build-up to war, either side can back down on the conflict, which grants the other side their primary war goal, but not their secondary ones. Essentially, it's intended to be a game of chicken, with nations setting war goals on each other, and then the fear of those secondary goals being enforced being an intimidation tactic. The AI does consider the ramifications of losing a war with significant secondary war goals when it considers backing down, but keep in mind that the infamy you take for adding war goals is only partially refunded when your enemy backs down. Infamy is an inherent part of diplomatic plays, so I am going to lump the two together. Infamy generation immediately harms relations, as we saw earlier, but it also is a number which you build up for your country. Much like relations, it has certain effects at certain thresholds, which are 25, 50, and 100. At 25, nations don't trust you and diplomacy is harder. At 50, most nations will want to join plays against you if you get aggressive, and at 100 infamy, great powers will work to rip you to shreds, and they will often succeed unless you're insanely strong. More importantly though, and I do mean this, super high infamy also results in your subjects becoming very disloyal. and seeking support from other great powers, which can ruin you for sure. Also, high infamy makes other nations want to embargo you, which can harm your economy, and for that reason, I recommend keeping infamy kind of low unless you desperately need the war goals for some reason. It's important to note that infamy generation is very contextual. Attacking unrecognized nations is way cheaper on infamy, and taking land with low population, or a population similar to your primary culture, is much lower in infamy cost. I'm going to give you some advice here when it comes to diplomatic plays, and I do hope that you take it. Diplomatic plays should only be against targets that you can easily defeat and who cost little infamy. That means you should be invading Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and at most, weaker European powers, if even those at all. It's not just about the infamy, but it's about the cost of war. Wars cost money, and this can stimulate your economy as your army buys goods, but it can also bankrupt you if you're not careful. I'll let Tarkus from stream talk about the actual army mechanics now. Let's talk about the army now, okay? It's pretty simple how the army works. You have an army. It's composed of regiments, okay? You can scroll down and see them here. Different regiments have different stats. So in this case, we have line infantry, and line infantry have all these stats. 20 offense plus a modifier, 26 defense, well, 25 plus a modifier, okay? General rule, okay? Infantry are good at defending, artillery is good at attacking, cavalry is good at occupying. That's basically all you need to know, okay? In the super duper early game, artillery is always really bad because cavalry are just better. So to give you an idea, this is a cannon artillery. It has 25 attack and 15 defense, which again, after modifiers is 26, whatever. This is a lancer. It has 31 offense and 21 defense, so it has more stats in every way, and lancers have more battle occupation and kill rate, whereas cannons only have more devastation, so they cause more damage to the area, okay? Like, it's kind of just like cavalry better. I don't know what to tell you. When you have an army, you have to mobilize it. So what is mobilization? It's going to basically make this army start buying more stuff. So armies already purchase goods. You can see here they're spending 2.64 thousand pounds on buying guns, grain, iron, and artillery for this army. Now that we've mobilized it, this number will go up. So watch the number go up. Now it's 3.11k because we've mobilized it. It's going to go up even more because we're going to keep mobilizing. And it kind of went back down. Market prices are fluctuating, but so market prices are fluctuating because of trade, and it's always more complicated than what it looks like. But basically, the price goes up because, like, also it looks like Britain got called in against us, by the way. Holy shit, we're gonna fucking die. But the price goes up because you mobilized, and that's the cost of war, you could say, right? Beyond that, in terms of what you take in when you mobilize, you could check your mobilization options. And this is what you're choosing to give to your units to get them to fight. So we have here, we can give them extra supplies. This gives us bonuses, but it increases the upkeep, or rather the cost of the army, by this many goods. Costs in this game are not money, they're goods, and then you pay for the goods. So if you look at our expenses, goods for military buildings, we're spending 3 grand on guns and this stuff as well. Some stuff on ships too. Whatever, right? When we do this, if we click this, extra supplies, and then I think we're going to have to probably give it a week because things take a second to update. You should see that now this will start displaying the costs of the groceries. So we're spending another 2 grand on groceries now. Oh no, right?
Quick question to interrupt because I'm actually not sure and I want to ask. Now let's say you started diplomatic play, sorry, definitely not war, and then England joins against you. Since you've started it in this 100-day period, okay, do you have an option to back down real quick and then just like leave, or are you forced to go through with it? So
I can back down, but if I back down, then the primary demand of the war is enforced upon me. So in this case, the Netherlands have added that they want to take back Gellery. So if I back down, then they get Gellery. Whereas if I lose the war, they also get their secondary demands, which is to return Flanders and to enforce investment rights on me. So they would take even more of my stuff if I lose the war.
I think that's changed since when I was looking at it, but good to know.
I think backing down's always been a thing, but I don't know, maybe it was. I think it's always been a thing.
You could be back down, but I think it was different with like how it happened. Because I knew that backing down was
one thing that was added was that now you can make primary war goals. So it used to be that, so here in this case, we only have one war goal, but let's say that I added like Parker Friesland. This is a secondary demand. So this will only be enforced if we actually win a war. If the Netherlands back down right now, then I would only get Holland. But they added in a patch, I don't remember which one, you can click this Make Primary button, and if you do this,
then you get both if they back down. That was added relatively recently. I don't remember how recently, but somewhat recently.
I think that was like a thing as well, where if you started an incident and you back down, they'd get all their secondary stuff as well. But we're just hallucinating here.
That's hilarious. I think that's a hallucination, but that, to be fair, it's long history. I don't know. Could be a long time ago.
I was thinking it could have been a release bug that was fixed, to be fair as well, because I remember people specifically complaining to me about that, which is why.
Yeah. We are going to lose this war with the Netherlands, by the way. I'm pretty sure we're going to lose, but we can try to win just for the sake of having fun, I guess. Let's see. Beyond that, when it comes to war, like mobilization options, you can give them stuff. You unlock more of these as you play. So like as you get new technology, you unlock more stuff. For example, adding flamethrowers, lots of fun. Chemical weapons, who doesn't love some mustard gas? You know, I love putting mustard on my hot dogs. Am I right, guys? Machine gunners, if you want to just mow down a bunch of infantry. These give you, again, increased input costs. It all ties into the economy. Increased input costs, and then in return, you get more stats on the army. Now let's see if we can win this war. I'm going to set the army to be defensive. The way that I guess we can talk about how fronts work, right? So you assign an army to a front. So to give an example, we'll go back to the HQ. So let's say we have an army. We've mobilized these guys. We want to put them into battle, right? Right now, they're not on the front. So we click here, deploy to front. We put them on the front. Now they're going to go there. We have generals, and let's wait to get to the front. We have generals, and they have like locations. Now the locations are kind of hidden from you, and I forget how to check them, but it doesn't really matter. What you do is you just decide, do you want them to be attacking or defending? Armies have offense and defense stats. So in this case, my army's offense is 24.5, and the defense is 25.7. So I'm better at defending than I am attacking. And this number here, if you played Hoi 4, this will look kind of familiar, okay? This number here is sort of like the game giving you an idea of how screwed or how pog you are. So if the number is green, it means that you're probably going to win. If it's red, it means you're probably going to lose. General heuristic, okay. If it's red, you're just going to set all your generals to defend the front, just like that. There's different kinds of defenses and offenses you can do based on your general's personality, but there's a grand total of like maybe 4 of these in the game. So like there's not that many. Like it doesn't really matter that much. With this one, with adamant defense, this is one I like to use. You consume more goods, but you gain defense, and you also gain a better chance for a tactic. We'll talk about tactics when we get into the actual battles, okay? But again, this is all gamba, to be clear. This is all gambling. None of this is anything you can influence. So just adamant defense, whatever, okay? The big reason to go to war, if you're trying to take land and stuff, is that you are gaining access to population, to resources, to buildings. This is the big thing, okay? When I conquer Holland, all of the businesses here are still functional. They're still going to be running. So this textile industry, this is going to be paying money to me instead, or rather it'll pay money to the capitalists of Holland instead. Now, it's important to note that buildings can be owned by people in different states. So maybe I could find an example of it, but maybe not, because Holland's kind of small, but everything is owned like in locally. But so I think Britain would be a way to look at this. So if, let's say we conquered London, let's say we conquered the home counties, okay? Again, everything's owned locally. What the fuck? What, do they not have any ownership from other states? Please? They all own it locally. Why is the economy so local? I guess the early game is why. Here's an example. Okay, we found it. So these coal mines are owned. Let's say I conquered the Midlands for argument's sake. I conquered this. These coal mines are owned by financial districts in the Midlands and in the home counties. The ones that are held by the home counties, they will still pay their money to Britain, because Britain has the home counties. But the ones that are held in the Midlands, those will pay money to financial districts that are under my control now. So I'll get the money from that indirectly, like by reinvestment and all. So that's why, like, it can also be important to conquer stuff, but just keep in mind that ownership isn't always local to the location. By the same logic, if I conquer the home counties, I do conquer all the financial districts. And that means that everything in here that's owned by Britain will also then be owned by my capitalists. And you can see the arrows, by the way, cool visualization. All these arrows are the businesses that are owned by Britain in this particular financial district. So stuff all the way as far as Canada will be owned by me if I conquer the home counties. That's one thing to keep in mind.
As far as reasons to go to war, this is, I would argue, quite accurate. Taking over financial districts, taking over resources, getting new pops, and the greatest of all, depriving your rivals of those things are all very good reasons. That being said, I do still hold to my belief that it's not a good idea to be fighting great powers and Europeans because the infamy cost is so high, and you can get similar value fighting unrecognized nations out in the east. Nonetheless, if you find yourself in war with a great power, you'll need an army. So it's time to look at how army building works.
I have two ways to make men. I can either reproduce. I'm joking. I wanted to make a sex joke so bad, but I held myself back. We can make a professional army, which is clicking on these red dudes and clicking this plus, and then clicking somewhere. For example, if I were to click in Wallonia, now it's going to take me about 9 weeks to make one regiment. One regiment is 3,000 men, if I remember correctly. No, it's 1,000 men. Sorry, one regiment's 1,000 men. I don't remember where I got 3,000 from. Okay? The other option is conscripts. They're the little gray guys who are holding the gun upside down. They look kind of cute, actually, because the gun's upside down. You can click, and you just build them. They're instantly built, so they don't take any time to build. Then you click Raise Conscripts, and this will start to slowly pull people in to the conscript building. So we can look at an example of it. I think there will be a conscript building in here. Is it displayed up at the top, maybe? Where's my conscript buildings? Has one not spawned yet, perhaps? I don't know where... Is it included in here? I don't know where the conscripts go. But basically, the conscripts are going to take some time to actually get created. But you can see them here that they're slowly employing. So the conscripts come here. And they usually have less experience. So these are recruits compared to the professional army. They are seasoned. So they're a little bit worse at fighting, but you can get a lot of them really quickly. But the thing is, you still got to pay for their equipment. So you're going to notice as we get more and more conscripts, this cost is going to go higher and higher. The numbers will fluctuate because of ever-changing market scenarios, but basically, like, they cost money. Also, we are somehow winning this war. I don't even know how we're winning, because Britain is in the war and we should be losing. This is push, I guess.
Quick summary, conscripts are not necessarily good for making a quick army. They take a long time to mobilize and are of lower quality than professional soldiers. Instead, the purpose of conscripts is to inflate your army size past what it otherwise would be, in the sense that your professional army is an accurate measure of the army you can actually afford to field, but sometimes you need more than that, so you start spending a bunch of money on raising conscripts. Professional soldiers mobilize very quickly and are always reinforced, but because of that, they are also always consuming military goods. So the question of professional or conscript army is more economic than anything else. With my current conscripting, I couldn't possibly support this army for the long term, but war is short term, right? Anyway, we now have to ask how we win wars, and thankfully, Stream Tarkus also discussed that.
These numbers here are the war support, okay? Current war support in Belgium is 73.5, okay? We take a negative to our war support based on these modifiers here. So radical population makes war support go down. Clout of lobbies. We didn't even talk about lobbies. There's so much in this game. Fuck, dude. But like, we have a pro-British lobby in the country, which means that when we fight Britain, our people don't like it because they like Britain. Like, our people like Britain, so they don't like it. Okay? And then we also have taking casualties. Taking casualties causes you to lose war support. Okay? If you look at Netherlands, they are taking significantly more loss to their war support because they're being completely occupied by me, right? That makes a lot of sense. Okay? If we go to make peace, we can look at everyone else in the war, and we can see that Britain has a war support. In this case, they are completely happy with the war because they haven't taken any casualties. And then we also have the non-negotiating partners like Prussia. Now, this number here, capitulation desire, is only for the AI. This determines when the AI will leave the war. When a capitulation desire hits 0, the AI always leaves, and the number is mostly calculated based on the war support. So, Prussia's about to leave this war, even though we're winning the war, and that's going to cause us to lose the war, which is pretty funny. What I can do, though, is I can peace out early, maybe, but then Britain doesn't want. What if I give them investment rights? No, okay, they don't want to. But basically, we're about to get like lose. We're about to get like destroyed. I see we got lose. That's funny. Imagine being able to talk. War support is winning the war, essentially. War in Victoria 3, in theory, doesn't have to be all or nothing, but in terms of like the actual outcomes of most wars, it's very rare that you'll be mixing and matching pressed war goals because the AI doesn't like to do that. It's very much like you lose or you win, and that's how it goes. Let's go ahead and accept that we're about to lose this war, as Prussia will leave in a second. There it is. Now that Prussia's gone, they were the ones handling the occupation of Holland. So without that, we no longer can win the war, and that's because you might think Netherlands will surely tap out soon because they're close to negative 100. At negative 100, they have to leave the war. War support cannot go down unless all the war goals or the capital of the opponents have been occupied. So in this case, I don't control Holland and I don't control Friesland. So that means I can't ever make them surrender. Victoria 3 has a significant problem with forever wars. Like, truly, like, wars that never end. And that would be if, like, somehow I was going to be able to hold this front, but I couldn't push it, they wouldn't be able to piece me out because they don't have their war goals. I can't piece them out because I don't have their war goals, and we would just sit here forever. If you look here, they have negative 1,000 reasons to accept, because they will never accept the peace deal if you don't occupy what you're asking for. So because of that, even though Netherlands very nearly lost the war, we can never actually escape. We can never actually get out. I'm pretty sure we're just gonna get the war deal like enforced on us. So if we just kind of like sit here and wait, in fact, if we are undefensive, right? We're gonna get slowly pushed in by the other people here.
Ironic, I think, to lose a war during the tutorial for the game, but this is a good lesson about Victoria 3. Sometimes things don't go your way, and you need to either reload an old save or restart the game. With how random this game can be at times, it's only human to look at the AI, blame it for your failures, call it a day, and try again. Let this be a lesson to you, that if something happens that you don't like, and you're not happy with it, never be afraid to just reload your game. And I also highly recommend against playing an Iron Man mode. This game is way too random for that, and it's too unpredictable. With that war lost, I have a few closing thoughts about war, and then I'd like to cover one more thing before we dive into the actual synthesis of the tutorial and go about understanding Victoria 3's many ways to play.
War is very much about the macro game. That's actually what I wanted to go with this, like for real, is that war is a macro game. It's not a micro game in this game. So you need to think about your economy and the cost of raising the military, and be like, okay, do I have enough goods in my market that I can afford to click all these buttons to get bonuses to my army so that I can win the war? I could, for example, get a supplement like sugar and tobacco and liquor and opium, but I don't have any of these things in my market, so I'm just going to get shortages. When you have a shortage, you lose organization, as demonstrated here. Right now, our organization will be capped to 63% because we have a 36% shortage, which means we get these debuffs, okay? So that's why, like, you know, you can't just click all of them if you don't have enough of them, because then you'll get a shortage. Now suddenly my army is completely useless because I'm trying to give it opium that I don't have. In previous patches of the game, it actually was still more effective to give out opium that you didn't have than it was to, like, not have opium on. So you would click this and then take the penalty. But now with how organization works, this penalty is truly killer. So we do not want to ever, like, take goods that we don't have. For that reason, war is generally like something which you plan in a sort of economic sense, not necessarily an actual, like, not like an actual sort of like micro sort of thing like in CK3 or in EU4. Another piece of advice for wars is if you're in Europe, don't fight other Europeans, because there's lots of people living in Africa. There's lots of resources in Africa. There's lots of people living in, you know, Southeast Asia, in China. There's no reason to be fighting over population and resources over here when there's all this land and all these people who you can conquer for way easier. Because their units, as you look at the Zulu here, they have 0 battalions, plus they can conscript a maximum of 3. So they have 3 units compared to, we just fought Britain, who has 120 plus 54 conscripts. Yeah, you know, one of them, you tell me, one of them seems a little bit easier to fight. You know? A little bit easier. Comparing with the Netherlands, 13 men. Not very many, but when compared to the 0 of the Zulu, it's pretty obvious who the easier combatant is. Now, what's available in Zululand? Well, they have coal. They have a lot of coal. In fact, 55 mines of it. And they've even got 300,000 people here. That's not that many, to be honest. That's not very many people, but it's something, right? You could, for example, move into Sokoto. This would be an easier conquest. You got 1 million people here, 2 million, 500,000, 800,000. You know, this is like a high population area. The problem, of course, is that you're going to discriminate these people, but like, who cares? Discrimination's peak, am I right?
Always consider when declaring war how much money you're spending on military goods which could have been spent on new construction. Always consider the weeks of time that you spent fighting on a front with conscripts, how those conscripts could have been better used making high profit goods in a factory. Victoria 3 treats war as a path to obtain things that are not possible to get by diplomacy, so you should treat it that way too. Conquer the weak, because the cost to conquer them is nothing, and make deals with the strong to ensure that you can avoid being weak yourself. Those are my parting words on the army before we really get into the meat of this tutorial. That's right, you just got served the appetizer. Now it's time to actually apply these lessons to some real goals.
I guess perhaps I've missed this, perhaps I've zoned out. So what is your goal right now with your current playthrough? I know it's to explain everything.
Yeah.
But that would be how a playthrough starts, right? Is you would say, okay, my goal is I want to conquer the world. Okay, I want to have the best economy, whatever.
That's actually a very good question. No joke. I'm not trolling. That is a good question. What is the goal of any given campaign? So let's go back to many, because this campaign's dead. We lost like half our country to a war that we shouldn't have fought, but we're just demonstrating things. Let's relaunch the game as Belgium now, and talk about what you might want to achieve as a particular country. In terms of like initial things before I even get into the game properly, I'll actually flip the question onto you. When you play CK3, Jillyeon, what are you trying to achieve?
Well, normally it's very character based. It's
Yes.
like, okay, I have this character and I want him to do this, or as this country, I want to tell this story.
Yep.
And so the mechanics kind of morph around it rather than going mechanics first.
Yes, I agree. Victoria 3 is a game which also can have that appeal, but it just depends on how you want to play it. So the most obvious answer to what do you want to do in this game, and this is like the Connor school of thought, no shade, okay, Connor's really good at this, is take this GDP number. This is just like you take the total number of goods in your market, multiply it by their price, add it up, you get the GDP number. You want to make this as big as possible. That's like the most common goal, is big GDP. So you might have a game where you play as America, you literally declare 0 wars, except for maybe the Mexican-American war because you want California and stuff, whatever. You declare like no wars, and you literally just build the economy to be as high as you can get it. That's one way to play. Very mechanical, very like Victoria 3 brained, okay? Maybe alternatively, you want to get the highest standard of living possible, which means that you want to get your pops to have really good jobs. You want to reduce the cost of the goods that they consume. You want to like lower taxes, whatever. You want to make your people as happy as possible. Those are like two of just the most obvious, like, yeah, those are goals, right? To me, that is like in CK3, if your goal was to get as much renown as possible, or your goal was to get as many kingdom titles as possible, like these sort of relatively easy to explain goals that you could achieve. Now, in Victoria 3, there are also characters. So when you play CK3, you might go and play as like Matilda, and you have in your mind some idea of like what Matilda's like, and you want to roleplay as her or something. You can do the same thing in theory with Victoria 3, but it's a little more indirect. For example, we have King Leopold here of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. His son, Prince Leopold, I believe this is the Leopold who historically is going to conquer the Congo and turn it into a hellscape. You could theoretically like roleplay reenacting that. So there's like historical reenactment, right? And in CK3 you do that as well. I don't know if you do it much, Jillian. You do more like the truly character-oriented stuff, but some people do like historical RP, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can do that in Victoria 3. I will say that Victoria 3 has significantly fewer opportunities for direct character roleplay. Just how it is, because the characters are much less impactful, but you still can do it. I've made Abraham Lincoln the King of America before. That's a classic. That's a really fun one to do. But like, you know, it doesn't really matter that much when you do that compared to CK3. Beyond that, you also have like ideological goals. So maybe you want to make a communist utopia. We talked about making highest standard of living possible. Some people will tell you the best way to do that is through communism. I disagree, but I mean, that's like super meta stuff. Like, I think that you can make really good SOL without communism, but maybe you want to make like a communist Belgium or something, right? That's like another goal you could have. And the way you pursue that is like, well, I want to pass council republic. So how do I do that? I got to empower the trade unions. And then you just go through the order of operations till you get back to whatever you need to do, right? The thing that makes this game a bit different than CK3, or maybe it's actually similar, is that you always have to build the economy. Like, everything hinges on the economy in Victoria 3. If you want to do high standard of living, you have to make jobs, and that means making buildings, and that means building an economy. If you want to like colonize Africa as the Belgium and do horrible war crimes there, you need an economy so that you can actually generate demand for goods and make buildings, make jobs here, right? Like, it's all a thing. It's all connected, you could say. Unlike in CK3, where, to take an example of this, in CK3, like, you never have to seduce someone's wife. Well, maybe you do have to, because like the moral imperative, but
Speak for yourself.
yeah, exactly. That's when I was I'm going here. You never have to do a lot of things in CK3, but in Victoria 3 you have to do the economy. It's like that's like one of the main mechanics. I guess it'd be like if you're trying to play CK3 without ever marrying, and even then you can play CK3 without ever marrying. You can just have bastards. But like in Victoria 3, you have to make buildings. I don't know. Interesting challenge run. Can you play Victoria 3 without ever making a building? I feel like it's actually not possible. I don't know. Pass that on.
You're allowed to conquer buildings?
I guess you'd be allowed to, yes. I guess you'd be allowed to conquer buildings.
And can you subjugate and then annex other nations' buildings? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't just speed 5 if you don't get invaded.
Yeah, like literally, yeah, you could play like United States and never do anything.
And
Like, that
if
is
you
an
allow
option.
laissez-faire, then you don't have to build the buildings if the capitalists
Yeah,
build them.
yeah. You could, again, like I mentioned, I think I mentioned way earlier, but there is a playstyle where you build nothing. Well, you build some things, but you just like mostly automate your economy and leave it at that. That's totally a playstyle.
Now that we're equipped with the knowledge of how to play the game, we can consider what goals we want to achieve. You can't make an attempt at becoming communist if you don't understand how the politics in the game work. You can't make an attempt at getting 10 billion GDP if you don't understand the economics of the game, and so on. I really enjoyed hearing Jillyeon's curiosity about the game's opportunities for roleplay, and I also enjoyed Lemon's interest in a challenge run because it shows that their minds are starting to consider the creative choices they have before them with regards to Victoria 3's playstyles.
You already have an established goal then for this. Okay.
Yeah, take the home countries.
Well, let me see. So established goal.
Take
Okay.
over companies.
So how about for an established goal? Let's say that we want to conquer the Netherlands because they're like our historical. Let's do some historical roleplay, right? Conquer the Netherlands because they're our historical rival. We don't get along with them historically speaking, and we're gonna colonize the Congo. That's gonna be like our thing. Okay.
Okay.
Can I add a little spanner in the works to make it more challenging?
What's your spanner?
You have to try and roleplay as a more absolutist thing.
Okay,
So you're
yep.
trying to centralize power around yourself, and freedom's actually bad, which is very bad for this game because it's
Yes.
very like pro laissez-faire. But you know, we're trying to a return to absolutism, quarter and country kind of a
I like
secret
that.
plan, if you will.
That's the plan then. So it's going to be conquering Netherlands, colonizing the Congo, and becoming authoritarian, like turning into a conservative monarchy. That's what we're going for, right?
Sure.
Okay,
Sounds
excellent.
About as close as we'll get to political absolutism in E5, to be honest.
From here, the rest of the video is going to be about letting you into the thought process I use as I play. I'll be talking out loud through pretty much all my decisions so that you can learn, and you'll be seeing me interact with all the mechanics of the game. As we go, I will also interrupt myself with more post-commentary to add further rationale if it feels necessary. I hope you enjoy this Belgian campaign, and before we get into it, I want to give a huge thank you to Jillyeon and Lemon Cake, who put up with my immense ramblings and just overall chaotic as hell stream. I really appreciate both of them for being there, and you should check out their channels. I'll be putting a link to them in the description and in the pinned comment. In case either of them or both of them are watching, a big thank you to the both of you. Thank you so much.
So then let's just go ahead. Let's just go through my thought process when I start playing. Immediately, my first instinct is I see that I have extra budget. So right now this money is just going to the gold reserve, and that's fine, but I don't really need it. So I want to make more construction because I want to make more buildings. I'm gonna go down here, and I'm gonna make like you'll get a good instinct for how much construction is too much as you play more of the game. But I'm gonna start with 4 construction sectors. This is the kind of thing where like you gotta play the game to know how much is too much, but we'll do that. And then my brain says this is gonna require me to have iron, so I'm going to start building up some iron mines. So I'll put like 4 of these down. What I also notice is that I'm gonna run out of infrastructure because this iron mine requires 2 infrastructure, and we need to get more infrastructure. I didn't bring it up before because it's a very simple mechanic. When you have low infrastructure, you just build a railway. Railways give you infrastructure, buildings take away infrastructure. That's it. So we add some railways to it. What I'm doing here is I'm making a queue of buildings. So I'm planning my economy, you could say, is how I'm thinking of this. I'm like, okay, I want more construction, I want the iron mines for it, and I want the railways for the infrastructure. I'm actually gonna reorder this a little bit so that way I have like a little more of like I get the infrastructure a little faster. Something like that, maybe. This. There you go. And then I'm going to use decrees. So I didn't mention decrees earlier because they're very easy to explain. You have authority. This comes from various laws, mostly like monarchy, wealth voting. This gives you authority. We're going to spend it on getting bonuses to our states. Road maintenance gives construction efficiency, and it gives infrastructure. I'm going to plop that down here. And then I'm looking at what buildings I have in Wallonia. And I'm seeing that I have a lot of resources. So there's like 3 types of buildings. There's manufacturing, there's resources, and there's agriculture. I have a lot of resources, so I'm going to drop down a resource industry decree. This gives more throughput to all of the resource industries. So it's like, yay, I get 26% throughput instead. So I'm never going to let these build up. Well, I say that, we're not quite going to unpause yet. We have to do technology. Considering that my goals are to conquer the Netherlands and to colonize, I'm going to focus on my military research. The question is, what do I want? We kind of already have pretty advanced technology in terms of military, so just looking like I don't see any techs that I really care to get. So instead, I'm going to look at social and think about colonization. The big one for colonizing is Civilizing Mission. Again, this is because I know the technologies by heart. If you're just learning the game, take the time to just browse through technologies. You know, can't hurt, right? Just be like, oh, hey, like, what's around here? And then just look at stuff. I'm going to prioritize Civilizing Mission, but it's tier 3. We're going to get all the tier 2 stuff first. I'm going to queue up all of this. That way I can get tier 2 things. And then we'll get the tier 3 stuff. Now, diplomacy. I want to be friends with everyone if I can. I just want to fight the Netherlands, so friends. We're going to be friends with everybody. Improve relations on France, Prussia, and Britain. These are the major players of this area. The rest of them I don't really care about. Okay. And then I think now we can unpause. I want to set a few more decrees, though. So, like, I think in Flanders we have a lot of farming. Yes, we do have a lot of farming here, and not very many resources, not very much manufacturing. So I'm going to set an agricultural decree in Flanders. I'm also going to put road maintenance there, because why not? We have extra authority, so we can just spend it. And then I'm going to do enlistment efforts, because this increases our conscription rate, so we can get more units to fight Netherlands with if we do this. So I'm going to do these two. And I think I'll leave the rest of the authority for now. And now we can unpause. Just let everything build. So you can watch our construction queue, and we can watch as things kind of change. We get these events. Click whatever you think is best. I'm going to take the tech on water tube boiler. It's okay, most events aren't that consequential. So just, you know, if you click through them kind of randomly, it's not too big of a deal. If you don't understand an event, most events are not very important, so just click through them and it's okay. Here comes our iron mines. We can check on how they're doing. I'm thinking about companies right now, because I want to get more iron. I look at my companies, and I realize that the Société Anonyme John Cockerell can take the iron mines from industry rights. This is a DLC feature, but, you know, get the DLCs, bro. They're really good. So we're going to give them control of the iron mines, and we'll give them... I think that's all we'll give them for now, because we don't want to overcomplicate.
Do you want your companies to do... Sorry to ask, but do you want your companies to do, like, 3 things, or do you want them to let them focus on 1 thing, if that makes sense?
I like to give them as much stuff as possible. That's what I like to do, as much as possible. Because then they can control more of your economy. The more of your economy they control, the more throughput they're giving you overall, right? So that's what you want. You can reform government. We're going conservative, so we're going to stick with the Catholic Party. And to be honest with you, we could pretty much right away just go for autocracy. The problem is that it would be opposed by a lot of interest groups, so we're not going to do that for now. I think we're going to have to find ways to strengthen our our Catholic Party. And to do that, remember, jobs define political support. We're going to want to make jobs that often support landowners, petite bourgeoisie, and the Catholic Church. That's going to be things like farming. So maybe we're going to turn Flanders into our, like, kind of conservative region by making a bunch of farms here. That will help create aristocrats and will help create more conservative people. One thing I'm going to do, this is just me knowing the meta of military building. I'm going to just get rid of the artillery. I don't like artillery until later in the game. Because, again, I talked about their stats. I don't think Jillyeon was here when I mentioned it because she was eating. But artillery has strictly worse stats than cavalry in the beginning of the game. So artillery is just bad. We're gonna get rid of it.
Okay,
but,
noted.
Yeah, but later in the game, artillery becomes better. It's just that right now it's strictly worse.
Okay.
You want to build all of the horses just to make sure on the same page?
Horsey good.
Okay, horsey
Awesome.
good. I like
Although,
horses.
okay, I should add, okay, hold on one thing. You cannot have more than half of your army be horses without taking negatives. So you have, like, if you have 15 infantry, you have to have 15 lancers or less. Because if you go over 50%, then it gets you a negative. It's insufficient support or whatever.
Take horde ideas for 25% capital.
True, yeah, horde ideas. So true, so true. So I'm just keeping an eye on my diplomacy with France and Prussia right now, by the way. And I can see that, like, we're getting pretty good relations here. We're just, like, it's just costing us influence. And we have lots of influence right now, so it's no big deal. My budget is, like, slightly negative, but we have, you know, we can afford to take on the interest. This is costing me about 2k in interest, but it's not that bad. It can't, you know, it could be worse. And as we build more iron mines, it's going to fix the price of the, it's going to fix the cost of the construction goods. It looks like we also have some pretty expensive fabric and some pretty expensive lumber, but don't be fooled by the golden coins, okay? Because you might think, oh no, like, fabric is really expensive, so it's probably costing me a lot. It's this number, this 2.8k, that tells you how much you're actually paying. Fabric is not consumed that much by construction, whereas iron is consumed a lot. So despite iron being a more balanced price, because the coins are smaller there, it's costing us like 4 times as much to pay for iron than to pay for fabric. But I'm okay with fabric being a high price, and I'd rather focus on lowering the cost of iron, because that's the significantly more important construction good. I didn't even talk about privatization, but you can, when you build a building, it's owned by you, and then you can privatize it you can sell it to private owners by clicking this button. And in this case, because we have a company that controls iron, we want to sell it to companies who can. So this is all automated though. Keep in mind that when you click this, you're just turning on the ability for it to be sold. It's not, you don't get to decide who it goes to. It just gets automatically purchased. Also, Britain wants me to join their Power Bloc. This happens pretty often. This is a DLC mechanic again, like the Power Bloc stuff. I'm going to accept because I want to be friends with Britain, even if I don't really want to be like aligned with them forever. I want to be friends, so I have to accept. Because they will not like me if I say no. But in fact, I want to see what their Power Bloc has. One thing to keep in mind is that all the Power Bloc principles do apply to you if you're part of the group. So we do get these bonuses, but they're not very important. Again, it's like you can be aware of them, but it's just not very important to the game right now. This is a journal entry we just got, by the way. This is about like coming to a truce with the Netherlands, where all the great powers will like make decisions about how to split up our country. It's entirely random. There's no diplomacy to this. This is also just gambling. A lot of it, like I said, a lot of gambling in Victoria 3. This is completely random. I checked the game files before. The way they determine what to pick has no bearing on your relationship at all. So it looks like they want to back the 24 points for some reason, which is where we release Gallery, and then like we get a truce. So we're going to ratify the Treaty of London, because if we say no to this, everyone gets really mad at us, and we don't want to be mad. Let's do that. There we go. And now I think we get a truce, right? No, okay, we still have the same truce from before, so we have to wait 9 more months to conquer that. Regardless, I need to keep my iron price even lower than it already is because my debt is kind of building up, and also I'm paying a lot of money for railways, and we're missing engines. So I'm going to start making some engines. Let's do motor industries. Just one for now. And we also are going to want some lumber. And again, in terms of how I know what stuff that I want, I'm just thinking about what my expenses are. And right now we're paying £1,000 for railways, and that's because of the cost of the engines. So I'm like, therefore let me go and change the cost of the input goods. That's like that's like our, what does Dr. House say on House when he's like, differential diagnosis. That's what we're doing, a differential diagnosis on the budget. Anyone ever seen that show? Just me?
It's Lupus.
Watch things. I only watch YouTube. Sorry.
It's always Lupus. True.
Everybody lies. What are their house witticisms?
He does say that. He looks at the black guy and then is like, "Can you break this person's house?" And then he's like, "Why would I do that?" And he's like, "'Cause you're black." That's like the whole joke.
Yeah, the first season of House is kind of insane.
Yeah. This would be a scary amount of debt for a new player. I was asked to do a challenge, so I have to play a little bit fast and loose. Actually, this is a good point to make. I'm playing very risky by taking on debt because, like, I'm basically gambling. Not quite gambling. I'm making an educated belief that the money I'm spending on construction is going to pay back enough to make this debt worth taking on. If you're new to the game, though, just play a bit slower. It's okay. It's okay to just like play a little bit slower. Like, just make less construction, play safer. But I'm like, okay, I know what my limits are gonna be, so I can handle making some extra stuff. It's no big deal. Also, you can take the time to really consider those events, but I'm just spamming through them because I know what most of them do, like off the top of my head.
For the people unaware of what he just said, if you're newer to the game, he's not gambling, he's investing.
That's right.
It's completely
That's right.
different. Completely different. Don't worry.
Completely different. I'm gonna check my agitator list because I need to become like an authoritarian monarchy, so I gotta check my agitator list for any good authoritarians. We do see Alexandru Lahovari, a Romanian. We got Ludi is in the stream, guys. There's a Romanian on screen right now, and we can make him the leader of the armed forces. He also will join the reactionary group. We don't really like reactionaries, but we're gonna invite him. Then we can put him into the government. Well, unfortunately, currently the armed forces are part of the Liberal Party, so we'll have to wait till that breaks apart, but we'll get there eventually. Basically, that's the first step towards conservativizing, is getting authoritarians into our country. Is our truce almost up? I think our truce is up, isn't it? Yes, it is. So we can go to war now. So we're going to do our first step, which is to conquer the Netherlands. First, we check our list of stuff here. Who's willing to join? We might be able to get Prussia to join us. And then beyond that, looks like nobody wants to help the Netherlands. So let's try this. I think we want to get some conscripts for this, so we can get an idea of how like strong our army is compared to his by looking. We can just mouse over his army. So he has 23 guys, not mobilized yet, but he'll mobilize them soon. 27 offense, 24 defense. I've got 19 with 25 offense, 27 defense. I'm a little better at defending. I think I want to get a little better at attacking. So I'm going to recruit some lancers. Lancers have more attack than infantry, but they have less defense. And, well, do I want to do line attacking? I think we actually just do some line infantry, maybe. Mix of both, perhaps. That's the best answer. We'll get like 10 infantry and like 15 cavalry. That sounds good. That's a lot of conscripts, but it's going to be expensive. But if we can secure control of the Netherlands right away, that'd be very strong for us. We can also invite Prussia. I'm definitely going to do that. They want me to become a protectorate. This is interesting. Becoming a protectorate means that... So, this has a lot of implications. Remember, subjects share the market with their overlord. So when we become a protectorate, we're going to join Prussia's market. And their market's really good. We would actually be pretty happy to be in Prussia's market. The problem is that then, as a protectorate, we have a lot of independence. But if we lose our liberty desire, one day Prussia could turn us into a puppet. That would be kind of bad. So I'm thinking, though, because we're going for like a relatively short-term playthrough here, though, we are going to choose to become a subject. Because I want to get this war done. And now I can choose to add a bunch of more war goals. Because we have Prussia's support. I want to conquer everything. I want it all. But let's see if anyone will join. Looks like no one wants to help the Netherlands, which is very good. This should be a pretty easy war for me. The nice thing, very nice thing about joining the Prussian market, if you look here now, you see that we're part of the Prussian market on the map. They have a lot of ammunition. They're very militaristic. That means we can actually upgrade our units to skirmish infantry without needing to worry about, like, ruining ourselves. And also, I'm just going to cancel those conscripts. We don't need those anymore, because now Prussia's going to be our, like, extra army.
A more meta level.
Yeah.
Would you say that this was just gambling again, and that England didn't join, despite you basically doing the same thing you did in the previous demonstration?
Yes. Yes.
There's no real strategy, just restart until England doesn't
Well,
join.
in this case, I saw that, like, England was very unlikely to join the Netherlands, but, like, yeah, I could have just gotten unlucky and they would have joined anyway, but they didn't, so, pog. But, like, yeah, it's a bit RNG. It's quite RNG. And the war is about to end because they're going to hit negative 100. There it is, and I've conquered stuff. Now, I forgot to add Limburg as a war goal, so, unfortunately, I missed a little piece of the country. My bad. So there's going to be a little dude hanging out in between us here. But now I've conquered the Netherlands, more or less. You know, it's close enough, right? Right? We're going to incorporate this stuff. So, I didn't talk about incorporated versus unincorporated states, but incorporated states are like your cores, if it's like EU4, or in the case of CK3, you could consider it like your de jure territory. This is like your core, your land that is yours, and you tax here. The big difference in Victoria 3 is you can charge taxes on stuff in your core territory, in your incorporated states. You cannot charge taxes on unincorporated states, but you can incorporate states for the cost of bureaucracy, which we don't have a lot of right now. So I'm going to just incorporate Holland and then leave it at that. That's all we'll do for now. Now, the Netherlands had a bunch of construction sectors that I cannot afford to continue operating. Looking at my current budget, there's like no shot that I can afford that. So we're going to close down some of the construction sectors that the Netherlands had, because that's too much for me. In fact, I'm going to shrink my construction sectors a little bit because it's a bit expensive right now. We'll just shut some of those down. There we go. That's a little bit of a healthier budget, which I'm willing to accept. Let's get working on our next step in regards to the challenge. Let's get into the Congo. And also we can check our liberty desire with the Prussians. As you can see here, we're slightly losing liberty desire, so it seems like Prussia has a little bit of power over us. But we will not have to worry about this unless we get below 25, then it becomes a problem. In fact, I can sabotage our relationship by just asking them for stuff. So if I ask them for market control, they're going to say no, right? Now, don't worry about what market control is. I just see that they're going to say no, and that's going to make us not like each other. So I'm just going to click that. And now we have more liberty desire. That's a good way to avoid getting, like, annexed by your overlord if you do become a subject. Now, in order to invade the Congo, by the way, we need a navy. You can only do a naval invasion with as many regiments as you have ships. So 3 regiments, would that actually be enough? Could that defeat the Congo? I'm curious now. The Congo have 6 regiments, but they're not very good regiments. So maybe we don't need more ships, but I'm gonna need them later anyway. So I'm gonna build up just a couple of ships, and these build up just like any other building. So we're gonna make a building in here, and then we'll make some buildings here, I guess. You can have as many heavy ships as you have light ships without taking any negatives. Heavy ships are just better, but they're like, you know, they aren't as good at raiding, I guess, is the difference. But we're able to couple of ships, and then we'll use that to go invade the Congo.
They made counter-infantry ratio, but for ships.
They did, yes.
It's like
they did.
be screening in Hoi 4, but they
Yep.
just didn't want you to do the EU4 system of only building heavies, basically.
Basically, yeah.
So that's how they made light ships relevant now. I actually didn't know this.
Well, that and light ships can raid convoys better than heavy ships. So if you're trying to do like stuff with raiding someone's market, that's better. I realized I just went and did a bunch of stuff that I didn't talk about because it was so instinctual I didn't think about it. When you conquer new land, or just every once in a while as part of like your maintenance of your country, go into your buildings tab and just look through all your production methods and reset them. One day, perhaps they will add an automated way to do this where you set everything to the newest production methods. But essentially, like, I'm just like, okay, just make sure everything is using the newest stuff. The lower in this list the production method is, the better it is. It's just like, you know, just go in here and just make everything the lowest it can go because this is the best stuff. You see how the profits are better? Like, everything you've unlocked, you should always just grab the newest stuff. Except for very particular examples are like military shipyards. I have a tiny navy, so I really don't need a production method that makes more ships, because look at the price of Man of Wars right now. It's like already cratered. I don't need more of these, so in this case, I'm okay with an older production method. Same goes for shipyards. I don't really have like a lot of fishing. I don't have like a lot of things that use clippers, so I'm not going to increase this one. But everything else, like, yes, I want to increase every time, especially because I'm in the Prussian market, so I have a lot more resources like available to me.
Don't you want to build 10,000 clippers to get your industry score up?
I guess, but the clippers are not going to be very profitable.
This is a Victoria 2 reference.
I see.
Yeah.
Playing as China, this shit is easy, bro. You say that, but you lost the Opium War, bro. Look at this. Jillyeon, you lost Hong Kong. What do you mean you're playing in China? And it's easy. Look at this. Look at this modifier you took because you're bad at the game. See all that?
It's my first game. Okay.
Terrible.
I don't know. Normally, when I see people fight China, instead of just losing Hong Kong, they lose huge swathes of provinces, and then people take a treaty port of like Jianzhou. So actually, I think Jillyeon's doing great.
Real.
She's only
Thank
lost
you.
Hong Kong.
I'm glad someone is on my side.
Yep. It's good that you guys are working together against the teacher. Good. Anyway, we now have, I think, well, no, we don't have the ships yet. We need to wait a little bit longer for the ships. I want to go invade the Congo. And one thing you can do, by the way, because wars never end in this game, I don't have the ships yet, but I want to get first dibs in annexing the Congo. So in case someone decides to invade first, I want to be ready to like jump on them before anyone else can. So I'm going to declare the war now. I'm not going to invade for a couple years because I want to build my ships first. A couple months, not a couple years, but I'm going to declare the war now and then let all this 100-day delay go through, and then I'll go and, you know, actually take over. Because right now I'm like, I don't want to invade till I actually have the navy properly.
That's so gentlemanly. You're giving them like a heads up. Oh, by the way, I'll invade you later.
Yeah.
Not that they can do anything.
They
about
have
it.
no navy, so they can't do anything about it. So they're just gonna sit there and wait until I come to them. I'm gonna make a quick army. So we have 24 men in this army, but we can't possibly invade Congo with only 5 ships with 24 men. So I'm gonna split the army. We're gonna go like 3 skirmish and 3 lancers. Move the selected units, then confirm. This UI is terrible. Okay, but whatever, we make it work. And then we're going to mobilize just this small army. We're going to grab like a general for it. This guy apparently is historical. This is Albert, Florent, and Joseph. Sure. Okay, now we have a general. We're going to mobilize, and then we'll plan a landing once we have our 6th ship. We have 5 ships right now. We want our 6th one to finish building. Take a second. There you go. Now we have our 6th ship. Now we can go do our invasion. The way you do an invasion is you click this little anchor, plan an invasion of an enemy state. You click on the state you want to invade, then you attach an army to it. So in this case, I'm going to attach the 6-sized army, because I don't want to have a massive negative. To give you an idea, by the way, if you try to use a too big of an army with the navy, you take a 66% penalty to invasion efficiency, which is just minus that much to all of your offense and your defense stats. Also, if you try to click the other one, it just puts them both there. So you have to close the UI, then reopen it, which I'm doing through this instead. You reopen the UI, and then you can change the army around. I love Victoria 3's UI.
By the way, if you want to win any war that's not really winning, just start loads of really random naval invasions. They're not going to succeed, but the AI at some point will just walk off the front.
That sometimes works. Other times it doesn't. The thing is, in the recent update they added it so that you don't have to assign armies to a naval invasion. Now you just put them in the HQ. So if let's say you put an invasion in Yorkshire, Midlands, East Anglia, and home counties, one army just in the HQ in Midlands can defend against all of those. But it's really janky and sometimes it doesn't work. So I don't know.
Okay, so
it still kind of works sometimes. All right, we've landed in the Congo.
This game was released on the in November 2022, by the way.
Yep, was. There we go. We just annexed Congo, by the way. There it is. There's one. Well, we'll finish colonizing the rest of it. That's going to take a long time. But now you might ask, what's the point of doing that, right? Because that's an important question. Like, why did we just do that? So remember when I mentioned that we can't tax unincorporated states? Like, we could incorporate these, but it would take forever because they're the wrong culture. Speaking of which, I want to incorporate these ones. These ones, so I'll demonstrate for you. Holland is going to take only 27 months to incorporate. I guess it was 5 years, but we've already got some progress on it. That's not very long. That doesn't take too long. For the colony to incorporate this will take 22 years, and this is because we have nothing in common with the cultures here. So it's based on these homelands. These homelands, if you have nothing in common with them via these heritage or language traits, it takes forever to incorporate them. So we don't want to incorporate that. 22 years is, keep in mind, it's a 100-year game. This is a fifth of the game to incorporate one state. Not worth it. Instead, we're going to not incorporate it. We're going to look here. I'm going to realize there's no taxes here. When there's no taxes, there's a lot of profits. And there's a lot of goods here we don't have access to normally. For example, dyes and sugar and tea. If we look back at our own country, we don't have dye or sugars or tea. We have rye and livestock. We have rye and livestock, more rye and more livestock, and wheat and livestock. So that's the purpose of colonizing, is that you get access to new goods that you might otherwise not have access to. It's mostly for the rubber. Yes, the rubber, it will eventually become very important, but right now we don't use rubber, so it's for the plantation goods in this game. One thing to keep note of, though, is that this place is recently conquered, so the turmoil is very high. Turmoil refers to how much of the population is radical. So because they were just conquered, they have a lot of radicalism here. We can look at the radical map mode to see that. It's red. There's no numbers here, but you see how it's all red? And that big line up there is from, us conquering the Congo, this new acquisition of radicals. So building here is going to be very inefficient. But, it's new resources regardless, right? So we're still happy to have it. We can use a decree called violent treatment. So the guy asking about when we're going to start chopping some hands off, this is the chop the hands off button. This reduces penalties from turmoil, but it gives you mortality. So you're going to be killing people, but you're going to be reducing the penalties from turmoil. So in the Belgian Bas-Congo, we're going to set a decree to start chopping some hands off. And in return, we can build buildings more efficiently. Still not very efficiently, by the way, still pretty low, but it's better. And the radicalism here will decrease as we sort of slowly get their SOL up. So if you look here, this population, their SOL is probably very low. It's 8. They want at least 4, but they have 8. And because our market probably has goods that they want, they should slowly but surely gain standard of living. It'll depend on exactly what their market was like beforehand, but essentially we want to slowly gain gain the SOL here. Let's go ahead and make maybe some coffee. In the current update, sugar is really OP, but I don't really like building sugar because it's lame. Let's just make coffee or something. We'll queue up 10 of those. About the car factory meta, but cars come so late in the game, right? Cars are really strong, but it's a super late game industry, so we don't worry about that.
What the hell is a car? Is that a type of horse?
So true, so true. I think we'll slowly see the turmoil is coming down because they're presumably gaining standard of living because they're buying Prussian goods. Now this is a weird thing. Indulge me to rant for a minute here. Victoria 3 doesn't do a very good job, in my opinion, of simulating reasons to be against a government besides not getting your food. So in this Congo place here, these people are upset because we conquered them, and that's fair. but they're going to become not upset because we're going to give them food, as in they're going to be able to buy food using the jobs that I'm providing them when I make this coffee. So it's like, do they have no dislike for us just because we're foreign? Like, it feels like there's not really much of that. They do have an increase in radicalism from being lacking in, like, from having low tolerance, but it's only 5%. Like, only 5%? Come on, it's a little bit low. But whatever, it's fine.
Quite similar actually in EU5 at the moment. You do get a debuff for an uncored province, but once you've like integrated it, so not even cored, they don't. There's an actual inherent debuff for like a I don't know an English country being in charge of Sicily. Nothing inherently there as well. So
yeah,
I think it's actually a bit of a trend. I think because obviously you still get separatism and those kinds of things, but yeah, I do think unaccepted cultures and those things can be a bit more of a debuff, but they'll probably make the game harder. People complain.
True, real. Imagine making the game harder. Who could do that? But I still haven't gone authoritarian, by the way. This is kind of the hard part, is that Belgium is a relatively liberal place at this point in history. In terms of how we can fix that, we need to look at the interest groups that have a lot of clout and try to get them to have the ideologies that we want. And the only way we do this is through characters. And this is, again, all gambling, okay? The industrialists have very high clout, so I'm like, okay, I want to influence it. I want to see what they're up to. If we look at their leader ideology chances, 75% chance that John Cockerell becomes a leader. This is our executive of our company. He's a moderate, so he doesn't have any ideology, which means he's useless to us. The other options are a radical, which is the total opposite of what we want. They want voting. We don't want voting. The one we do want is the authoritarian, which is 6% chance of happening. This is calculated based on the amount of pressure that comes from the reactionary movement in this case. The reactionaries, they have 18% support, so we're going to want to boost the power these guys have in order to make it a higher chance the industrialists will get an authoritarian. Now, if I were doing a YouTube video, okay, what I would do is I would right-click on this leader, I'd click exile so that we get another chance to roll a new leader, and then if I didn't get what I wanted, I would reload the game and then try again until I got the one that I wanted. But that's going to take a long time to do because 6% is kind of low. So instead, I'm going to check my agitators, and we're already full up on agitators, so we can't get any more. But I can imprison this dude, so we'll put him in prison for a bit. And then we'll check, like, is there anyone else that we can get, maybe? There's nobody. There's no agitators. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. There's literally no one. So we have no options. We would have to do the, like getting rid of this dude over and over again. We can also check other interest groups. Maybe they have better chances for an authoritarian. So the armed forces also have 17% chance for an authoritarian. The intelligentsia has no chance for it, so that's kind of sucks. And that's basically all that we can do to try and like make it happen.
I love how invading the Netherlands and the Congo was significantly easier than becoming an absolutist monarchy as Belgium.
Yes, it really was. By the way, in terms of how we get into more of the Congo, because right now you're thinking like, oh, we barely even have the Congo. These states have malaria, and malaria means that you basically can't colonize. Like you can, but minus 95% growth means very difficult it takes a long time, okay? So it's not going to happen. So what we need to do is we need to go into our tech, and we need to research malaria prevention. This will take away the effect of malaria in all states, but it's a tier 4 tech. It's going to take a long time. Now, how do we get tech faster? The answer is a combination of literacy and universities. What literacy gives you is it gives you more innovation cap, so you can have more possible research at a time, but your actual research is generated by universities. So in Holland, for example, we have a university with the philosophy department. So if you want to research faster, we're going to have to get a lot of universities. But because this game is communist propaganda, universities can only be run by the government. There's no privatized university. You cannot live out your American dream of running private universities. So we have to pay for school, and school is expensive. So, you know, we're going to build up some universities, but it's going to hurt a bit. Woke game, exactly, so woke. So a lot of what happens now is mostly waiting and hoping that we can get the interest group leaders that we need in order to become authoritarian for the purpose of our own goals. That's like what we're trying to accomplish. Authoritarianism in this game is not very good, so I wouldn't recommend it if you're not actually trying to like achieve it for the purpose of like a meme. But, you know,
I mean, you could go gambling.
That's true. Could just go gambling. Because if we could convince the industrialists to be authoritarian, it would probably swing things quite far in our favor. But it's like only a 5% chance, man. It's so low. I think I'd rather see if I can do it through mechanics. Like, I'd rather get this Alexandru guy in charge of the army. And this is why this could matter, is if we look at the armed forces of party affiliation, they associate with the liberals because the guy in charge is a liberal. So that means that he's going to associate with the Liberal Party. But if we put an authoritarian in charge, he might associate with the Catholic Party more. So I'm going to temporarily, okay, confirm this. We have no legitimacy. I'm then going to put in charge this guy, who's an authoritarian, and then I'm going to reform the government again with, like, this party set up, whatever. And now, on the next election, this guy might change parties to the Catholic Party. We'll have to see. There, apparently he will. So he's gonna join. Remember, he's gonna make his own party. That's actually really bad. Well, rip. Didn't work how I wanted it to. Also, hi Jillian. There is a woman in this stream. You're allowed to talk, you know. I'm not trying to make it so you can't talk.
I just don't want to interrupt the tutorial with like fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's more fun to do it in chat.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. All the YouTube viewers being like, or like when I do CK3 videos, the YouTube viewers like, this guy always seems to play men. Kind of weird.
I mean, for CK2, for Bloodline stacking, you kind of had to be a woman, because most of them were matronal transfer, so real meta was woman maxing.
True.
I think men are just more viable in CK3 though.
Yeah.
The prowess loss from pregnancies are a lot more brutal as well.
It's so true. The prowess loss is so painful. What am I gonna do without
Probably
my prowess?
the worst part about pregnancy, I think.
Yep.
Is that you're a worse soldier.
So true.
Maybe that's just how I play CK3, but I am usually constantly fighting and constantly leading troops, and then I try and duel someone, but then I'm pregnant.
You hate to see
really
it.
get in the way. Yeah, because I usually forget I'm pregnant.
Here comes the coffee, by the way, and as you can see, pretty profitable considering it's one. Like, keep in mind, it's only like 2 buildings. Very profitable. Big reason why. Let me show you the wage difference between the Congo and Belgium. So a Congolese laborer is paid on average 1.5 euros per week. Lemon, can you tell me in today's society, could 1.5 euros feed you in Europe? I don't know. Is that a good?
Maybe if I was
wage?
living in the Congo, I could probably live off €1.50.
Maybe. The 1.5 euros is being paid out there. If you go over to Belgium and look at this iron mine, the average wage is 2.95, nearly double. So those businesses are paying half the wages to their people in the Congo because wages are based on the average standard of living of the state. So if we look at this state, the average standard of living is 9.3, whereas in Wallonia it is 10.2. Not that big of a difference, but it's also being affected by the fact that it's an unincorporated state. So unincorporated states also have lower, wages, I think.
All I'm hearing is the standard of living should be kept as low as possible to maximize birth rate and minimize wages.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. Like, keeping standard of living low to lower wages does help with profits. Thing is that eventually you want a higher standard of living because you need people to buy stuff. The thing that sucks right now is we don't have slavery, so we can't beat the slaves. But if we had slavery, we could beat them. Kind of sad. Because this production method is really strong. You essentially add some mortality to your workers, and in return, you produce like nearly double. Sorry, you produce 50% more coffee in return for giving some mortality to your workers, and you reduce the wage. Like, holy, you reduce the wage, right? So now they make even more profits. But we need slavery for that, so we can't click it. Very, very sad. Anyway, I'm gonna make a new company, by the way. So there's 2 reasons why I'm making a company of this particular type. I'm making the Belgian Plantation Company. First, because its prosperity bonus is colony growth speed plus 10%, and we plan to colonize the Congo, right? So that's going to be useful for us. Second, it has a prestige good, which is coffee, and we're making a lot of coffee here, so that also makes sense, right? Now third, this is the big brain part, okay? The Belgian plantations have partial aristocratic ownership. So I'm hoping that when we make this, we're going to get more aristocrats in our country, and that will help us get more authoritarian, because aristocrats tend to support authoritarian. So we're going to establish this. And let's give it a name, because you can name things. Jillian, give me a name for a plantation in the Congo.
I don't want to give you a name for a plantation in the Congo.
Why not? What's wrong with naming a plantation?
It's just some bad brand optics. I don't know.
You don't like
Speaking of,
it?
I would like to propose the name the Jillyeon Plantation.
No,
All right.
no.
The Jillyeon Plantation.
I've heard Jillyeon loves when you name things after her in the game.
Of workers' rights. We'll make it kind of like brand friendly. They
It's
grow
like when
workers'
you
rights
open-
there.
It's like when you open a wing in a hospital, but instead of a wing in a hospital, it's like a thing that sends people to the hospital. Well, there's no hospital there.
Well, they don't really get a hospital, no.
Yeah. Now that we have this company, by the way, making 7,000 pounds of profits on just 5 coffee plantations, okay? Now, you might be asking, who's buying all this damn coffee? Well, if we look at the Prussian market, we can see who's buying it. It's literally just like rich people in Prussia buying it. We're making the coffee, and the capitalists are buying it. Aristocrats are buying it. Everyone's buying it. So just people are eating it. And this is why SOL can matter. For now, there's plenty of consumption of goods, but later on, we might be making like tens of thousands of coffee, right? And it's possible we won't have enough rich people to be able to buy all the coffee. At that point, we either trade and we have to eat tariffs, or we invade someone and make them trade with us without taking tariffs, or we improve our standard of living and then people can afford to buy more coffee. For now, this early in the game though, it's irrelevant. There's plenty of consumption for coffee. Sorry, it's not a coffee plantation. We're growing workers' rights here. It's a workers' rights plantation. I forgot to mention that part.
How many workers' rights have you produced yet?
Let's see. So far, we're producing about 202 workers' rights per week.
Did that say you discovered psychiatry?
Yeah, I did discover psychiatry. New tech. I clicked through it so fast, sorry, but yes. It gives
Thank
us
God.
influence, and it gives us maneuvers per diplomatic play, as well as bureaucracy down.
Does it increase the efficiency of the workers' right plantation?
It does not. It does not, unfortunately. I wish it did. I wish it did. Alright, so we got this event here called the right result, and this basically is we can rig elections. I've been clicking through it, just taking the one where we don't rig the election, but now that I'm focusing on the politics, I'm going to talk about rigging elections. So we want the Catholic Party to be strong, because we want to go autocratic, of course. So I'm going to rig the election in favor of the Catholic Party. What this does is give them huge momentum in the election and take away momentum from everyone else, but it's going to reduce our electoral confidence. So if you look at our electoral confidence, we're at 85% right now, and that gives these negatives. It makes votes in general worth less. It makes like political strength from wealth worth more, which is what we want, but it costs legitimacy. So, you know, oh well. But look at how the graph changed. Now the purple line, that's the Conservative Party, they're doing really well. So we just rigged the election a little bit, and maybe we can get rid of elections now. We'll see after I'm not sure how much clout they're going to have. We'll have to see. But this helps us, basically, by doing this. So the standard of living is getting worse in the Belgian Congo, by the way. And this, I believe, is because every time we make coffee here, we're getting rid of some arable land, which means less grains being produced. At the same time, though, it wasn't already fully employed, so maybe that's not why. But something's basically like something's happening that's causing these people to suffer, and I don't know exactly what it is, but something's going on. Let's check our clout now. Still kind of bad clout, but so right now we can try to pass autocracy. It's pretty low chance to pass. What I really need is an authoritarian, like, industrialist. I really need that. Does that exist? No, it doesn't. Are there any authoritarians around? There is an authoritarian agrarian guy. So normally, like, this isn't... So normally you're not trying to actively regress your country to more, like worse laws. So this is supposed to be kind of difficult. Like, normally it's not this hard to change your laws, but in this case we're pursuing a sort of messed up goal. This guy's already an authoritarian, though. Okay, I invited an authoritarian. We already had one. That's funny. I guess what I can do, real quick, is we can, like, bolster the reactionary movement to try and increase the chances that we get an authoritarian in the future. So I took off some decrees to make some authority, because authority, we get it back, we take the decrees off. So I took that off. We're going to bolster the reactionaries, because they will increase the chance that an authoritarian shows up. And then I'm also going to put a agricultural decree in the Congo to increase the throughput on the coffee plantations. Now, one reason why throughput on a plantation is so good is, remember, throughput increases the inputs and the outputs. But guess what, bro? Plantations have no inputs. They just pay wages. And throughput does not increase wages. So this is like having production efficiency from EU5. It's pure output. It's just pure money. It's very nice. We love to see it.
But does it increase the consumption of workers?
It does not increase the consumption of workers, no. It just increases the output of coffee, which makes it really, really strong. One thing that we should talk about, since we're looking at this, right, is okay, I see that you've made a very profitable coffee plantation. Why is your budget still kind of low? Like why is there like 12,000 profits here, but your budget's still only plus 1.54k? And that's because we have to look at where the money goes, right? As we build these, we're owning part of it, so we're making some of the dividends, but a lot of the dividends are going towards the company, and then the company's putting it in the reinvestment pool for the most part. Although actually it's paying a lot of it to the aristocrats right now, which is good. We want the aristocrats to get rich, remember? Because the aristocrats getting rich will help us pass better laws, but I also just realized that the aristocrats are, in fact, local Africans. I don't know why, but it chose to make the HQ in the Congo. So, look, I don't know how to explain it, but basically, like, the owners of the coffee are themselves also local, like, African colonials, and they're fucking rich. Oh my god, look at the SOL. So this actually is not going to affect our politics very much because this is not incorporated. So incorporated states, they don't have much political power. It's where does it show here? Minus 50% universal political strength. So actually, my big brain plan to make a company with aristocrats in it may not be working because it's locally run, which is really funny to imagine that like Belgium arrived here and then picked a couple of like aristocrats from the local Congolese nobility and then said, yeah, go run a workers' rights plantation over here, and they're getting like dirty rich on it, and I'm sitting here like, where's my money? But yeah, it's a bit weird. Another masterful gambit, yeah, thank you. Now the thing is, because they're so dirt poor here, there are very few people that are rich enough to become aristocrats, so the plantation is not having employment issues. The plantation's fine. But the HQ where the aristocrats live is having trouble employing, which is like weird. Not only that, you can't tax them. Yes, because they're overseas. I can't tax them either. I'm reinvesting local community. Yeah, that's correct, Lemon. We are in fact enriching the local Africans, like a lot, by the way. This might actually be among the richest people in our entire country. I kind of want to check census data. Sort by standard of living. No, there are some Flemish capitalists that are equally as rich as these African aristocrats. But that's just a little, by the way, this, for those that wanted the spreadsheets, by the way, here you go. Jillian, what do you think of the spreadsheet? Interpret this for me.
No, I don't have to do that anymore. I graduated.
Real. But basically, you can sort this by stuff. So if you want to check where your richest pops are, we currently have the richest people in the entire country are capitalists in the Wallonia, and then the aristocrats in the Belgian Congo, which is just really funny.
I like the modern art at the top.
Oh, let me see. What did I missed it?
No, you closed out of it. Go back to the spreadsheet.
Oh, like all this stuff?
I can't believe Jillian
boxes?
just said go back to the spreadsheet.
True, dude. Dude, clip
squares.
that. Clip that. Go back to the spreadsheet. Holy. Victoria 3-player in the making. Also, the average standard of living in the workers' rights plantation is 4.7. It doesn't get much lower than that, by the way. That's about as low as it goes. So
I can get it down to 1.
Well, if it's down to 1, they're gonna die faster than they can work, probably. But,
Oh my god.
yeah.
I'm so glad my name is on this.
Yes, I'm glad too.
Well, think about all the workers' rights they're producing. The workers back home are going to be so happy.
Oh, they don't get workers' rights. They're just producing
The
workers' rights.
problem is they're exporting all the workers' rights back to the home country. If you kill productivity and projected HQ state, you can get it to change elsewhere. Okay, I mean, look, I just think it's funny. The thing is, I'm not like a meta slave at all. Like I know that like I might seem like it, but I really don't care about meta that much. This is obviously bad because I wanted this to influence my politics, but now it won't because I'm like, just like I can't. Those pops are not going to be influencing our politics very much. But it's really funny that like it's a locally run company. It's a family run business. So I'm just laughing. A meta what? A meta slave? You ever heard that term before? Also, the Prussians forced me into the war they're having against the Americans, and now we lost our treaty, but that's fine. This is stuff happening that I don't care about. You know, the Germans or rather the British are invading America. It's okay.
On that note, though, because wars have started, unfortunately, I want to say it is 3 a.m., so I'm gonna
Okay,
call it
yeah.
here. Then. Thank
Sure,
you very
sure.
much for the streams and everything.
Yep,
But
yep.
self-doxing myself, I'm currently in a GMT time zone. So
Oh damn,
anyway,
it's over.
thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Enjoy the rest of the stream.
For sure.
Bye.
I'll try to
And
pass.
sure
I'll try to pass
the goal.
authoritarianism in your name, buddy. I'll try.
Oh, thank you. Please open another workers' right plantation as well when you start another company.
In fact, I'm just gonna give away all of these concessions. You know what? Let me stick around for like another 10 minutes. We're gonna see if we can get it passed, okay? What I just did is I just negotiated with everybody and gave them anything that they wanted, and now we'll see if we can pass it. There's immediately there is a civil war brewing. The second I started it, there's a civil war brewing.
I believe.
Yeah, so okay, it's probably not gonna happen, so you can go. I don't think it's gonna happen, man. I tried, but it's really tough to do.
Still 60, success 39. I mean, surely you have to gamble.
It's gonna be Gamba. Here, stay for one Gamba. It's only gonna be a couple days.
They're doing gamble.
One Gamba. Watch
Surely,
it pass.
I mean, surely just win a gamble.
Oh, we've got to rig the election first. Rig the election, okay. See? We could also just fight the Civil War. So one thing to say is I'm being lazy. I don't want to fight a Civil War, but you totally can just fight the Civil War and then you pass the law on it.
48%.
Okay, we got an advance. That's a good start.
Gamba.
Okay. Oh my god, wait a minute. We no longer legitimate. What happened? Oh,
Yeah, but 55.
Unfortunately, our government's no longer legitimate. I gotta lower taxes. Hold on a minute. What happened there is my king became arrogant, and that reduced our legitimacy to the point where we were no longer a legitimate government. Oh, and now we're no longer legitimate. I can't. So this civil war is making people really unhappy. But maybe when the election finishes, we'll get legitimacy back. We're gonna give it a second. Sorry, we can't pass a law when we're not legitimate. So okay, restore. Okay, I literally can't have a legitimate government right now. So actually, the Gamba is not paying off.
No.
It is not working.
But election, maybe post-election.
Well, the election just finished, and we still have no legitimacy.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I think it's not gonna happen. To do this, we would have to just fight the civil war, which I guess we can do. But wait, reforms at gunpoint.
Oh.
What's this?
I'll let you find the Civil War, but
Oh, we just passed you.
I'll call it here though.
Okay, sure. Yeah, sure. I'll see you later, Lemon. Thanks for hanging
Did
out.
the best. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
see you later.
See you all around. Bye.
Bye.
Now it's just you and me, buddy.
He's the stats guy. I'm color commentary. I don't know what to do.
True. You and all the workers' rights plantations. I mean, you say you're the stats. You're not the stats guy, but you're running the plantation, bro.
Yeah, I'm doing a really good job of making their lives really fucking miserable.
Yes, sir. To be clear, by the way, if you do want to play Victoria 3, you don't have to be the guy that makes everyone's lives miserable. You can totally actually focus on making people's lives really happy, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, but nobody wants to watch that.
That's true. That's true.
I tried to make a wholesome empire of love and no.
Yeah, nobody
People
wants
want to watch the war, the oppression, failure.
Yeah.
Not that woke
Yeah.
liberal bullshit.
For a quick summary of what just happened, by the way, we got an event from the Civil War where we had reforms at gunpoint, where the rebels were basically like, we're gonna kill the king unless he passed universal suffrage. So we passed it, but people don't like universal suffrage, so now passing autocracy is really easy. And the Civil War also triggered. So it didn't even stop the Civil War. Which is really funny. But
Great.
yeah. We're just killing our own people now. And oh, the Congo
What?
also rebelled. Oh no.
What? The workers' rights people
Yeah.
aren't satisfied?
They decided to seize the workers' rights for themselves. They can't do
Could
this.
have seen that coming.
I know. 3% chance of a stall and we just got it. That's really fun. But yeah, I think I hope that watching this kind of has helped you learn a little bit about how to play, if you do ever want to play, by the way. But it's like
Yeah.
it's really gonna be one of those things where you gotta feel your way through it by just like playing. I know it's really
Yeah,
cringe to
for
be like,
sure.
oh, just play the game and you'll learn, but like it really is like that. Like just play and you'll learn as you go.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
I didn't realize this came out in 2022. So
Hmm.
before EU5, was this the most recent Paradox title?
I guess. I'm trying to think if anything came out before it, but or after it. I mean, I think it would. I think it would be. Yeah.
Because CK3 was 2020?
Was it? Oh my
2019.
god. Game's old.
I know, we need CK4.
True. Stop developing CK3. No more content for that. Gotta stop that. By the way, one nice thing about the fact the Congo rebelled, because they rebelled and we killed them, no more radicals. Now they're just happy.
What happened to the radicals?
Well, you know. Well, you know, they went to a better place. Also, we just got
They
autocracy.
Definitely
We did it.
did.
We're an absolute monarchy.
Yay.
There you go. Lemon can be happy now. With that, though, I think we are gonna more or less call it here because like there's more to pursue. So the thing is, in terms of colonization, it's just tech. I need to get tech, and that just takes time. So like that's annoying. I don't want to sit here waiting for tech. I'm just wasting everyone's time. To do the colony, okay, get malaria prevention, and then you can colonize because this is going to take away the negative effects of malaria. That's all you need to do. Okay. Also, the company did move. Yes, someone mentioned that because this place rebelled, the colony, rather the company moved. So now the company is actually in Flanders, which means that my strat of having they're still African. I don't know what to. They moved the African pops here, so now they like evacuated the aristocrats and moved them to Flanders, and now they're just living here. I don't even know what to. Whatever, man. I don't know what to say about that. I thought it was base, but they're also not here. They're also not living here. I don't know what to say anymore about it. It's something's weird. Okay. DEI hiring, mods ban that guy. But yeah, we will call it here though. But I will say, Jillian, if you want to do a playthrough sometime, okay, you can always DM me for advice, and I promise I won't be overbearing because I believe the best way to play is you just learn by playing. So if you want like particular advice, you can ask me, but you should just launch the game and go play if you want to figure it out. That's really the best way.
I don't even know if I own the game. Let me see.
Just ask Paradox. They'll well,
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't
I know
say
I
that in front of
bothered them.
everyone, but yeah, you can get the game and all the DLCs for free
Well,
if you ask.
Yeah. I know I
Probably.
bothered them for Hoi 4.
Yeah.
I think that. Oh, and Stellaris. I don't think I asked for Vic. So, and I'm not gonna put no.
No, up to you.
Can't
If,
even
like,
finish that thought.
if you don't want to play it, I totally understand because like I present the game kind of like all at once and it's really hard to take it all in. But I think that like if you take your time with it and just learn like maybe one mechanic at a time, it should be okay. I do say like I recommend the Belgium start. I really do think it's good because you can make mistakes and learn from the mistakes. Whereas if you play as Sweden or as Switzerland or as even like America, you can be doing things wrong and not realize it unless you know why it's wrong. Whereas as Belgium, you fuck up, you're gonna get conquered and you're gonna like stall out your economy. Like you'll know when you're doing something wrong. And that can actually help you learn a lot better than having an easy country. But you know, whatever. That's just my philosophy.
Okay, I'll add that to my notes. Last line in the notes.
And with that, we come to an end on this tutorial. Some final words from post-commentary Tarkus. I hope that you learned something here. I'll say it right away. There were some mechanics which we did not cover, things like lobbies, and probably a couple other things that I'm forgetting right now, but that's just the nature of a game so massive as Victoria 3. My goal here, more than anything, was to provide you with the skills and knowledge that you need to just play the game and make good choices, as well as to present the thought process behind actual choices in the game. I had a lot of fun doing this stream, and I suspect my co-hosts had a bit less fun, but that's only because they haven't played Victoria 3 yet. Please do be sure to check out Jillian and Lemon Cake's channels. They deserve at least one new subscriber each for sitting through the torture I put them through, not to mention, they both make excellent content. If you have any questions about Victoria 3, you can leave a comment, and I might reply to it, but I tend to be lazy about YouTube comment replies, so if you actually want a response, come to my Discord and just ping me. With that, I put out a heartfelt thank you to all the viewers and the channel members, and a thank you to you, personally, dear viewer. Thank you for your time.